Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to the program. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's August 4th, 2026. Here we are. I think, do these count as the dog days of summer now that it's August? Is this like a real thing? It's hot. I don't know. We went swimming. It was fine. The world of video games is all around us. There, no matter how hard you try to escape it, it is all here. And why don't we talk about some of that? Why don't we just get right into it, huh? That's right. I'm talking about the video game GunZZZZ. The only video game that matters is back. I don't know. I spent some time over the weekend playing GunZZZZ. The Duel. That's GUN capital Z. It is coming to Steam. This game is this is a third-person shooter, if you're not familiar with it, from like a very long time ago. 20 more than 20 years. When did this game originally, because I'm trying to think, like, I'm trying to remember the office I was in when I first played GunZZZZ the Duel. 2006. Okay. So yeah, 20 years old. It's not a game that I don't know, like, it was not a game that necessarily got talked about a lot then, because that was a very early time for free-to-play games on the PC, and it was not really something that got talked about or covered widely in the press at the time, because I think, you know, a lot of publications were really not great at, and GameSpot I would certainly lump into this back then. We were really bad at approaching free-to-play as it became not just dog shit video games. You know, like the early days of free-to-play was just like a lot of ripoffs, and, you know, this is before phones. But it was a lot of stuff that you're just like, I don't know, these are just like flash games or whatever. And as that stuff started to grow into something that was a little bit more real, the first free-to-play game I remember playing on PC was like a 3-on-3 basketball game. And you used your keyboard to play it, and it was like not bad as a like arcade style basketball game or whatever, but it was not a very good game. But GunZZZZ the Duel. You know, it was not a shareware game. It was not something where you're buying a registered version. It was not an adver game. Yeah, someone brought up America's Army, but America's Army was not a, you know, not a microtransaction based, you know, America's Army was them trying to get you to join the army. That's an ad. The taxpayers developed that game for you. GunZZZZ the Duel is a third-person competitive shooter. It is swords and guns, like they're trying to do a little bit of John Woo type of shit in that game, and it's back. It's coming to Steam. I don't know, like the development or the ownership, whatever the deal is. I guess it has changed hands, and it is in the hands of a company that intends to bring it to Steam, and they're running like a play test. So if you go to the page on Steam, you can join the play test, and I think they're just letting people in. I don't know. This is a button you press, and either you get in or you don't. But they are running something now that you can play. Yes, Sebmal in the chat says the Steam description is just alternative action GunZZZZ the Duel. It's a disgustingly technical game, I guess is what I would call it, for something that just looks like a shitty anime third-person shooter with some diving and some swordplay. It ended up having like one of the most ridiculous kind of APM situations of just like, you need to do all of this shit just right, and then you can bounce off the, you know, you're doing sideways dives off this wall, and you're climbing up walls with wall jumps and doing, you know, like all of this kind of weird movement tech that would become very key to the game for the years that followed. And the sickos that stuck with it, that was the thing. People were, you know, it was the sort of game where people were mapping their controls all weird in order to do the things they needed to do, and make it all work. And I remember watching videos of this, not that long ago, watching videos of people doing some of the more extreme movement stuff in guns and just being like, I didn't even realize, like, at the time when the game came out in like 06 or, you know, like around that time, none of that was immediately apparent. You're just like, okay, I don't know, I'm running around and I'm shooting people, and then I have a sword, and then if I round a corner, I can hit people with a sword. Like, you can't really, you know, it's not like a lightsaber. You're not blocking bullets with the sword per se, but I want to say there's a little bit of that in there, but you know, it just had a very distinctive weird vibe to it, and you know, it was an early free to play game, and so I think a lot of people back then, if you were kind of looking for that sort of thing or couldn't afford you know, mainstream video games at full price, you know, it was one of those good early examples of like some shit you found online and you're like, oh my god, what is this? And then it's very easy to see how someone could like sink hours and days and years of their life into playing something like that over time. And so it's coming back. I mean, you know, it's a very different context. It's I say coming back, but I think you can still get on a Chinese server for the original game. I think there is still some shit up out there. Yeah, Gunbound. Gunbound's another great early example of like, maybe a little bit later if I'm remembering correctly, but Gunbound is another kind of good early example of some free to play stuff. And again, I'm specifically talking about free to play and not shareware, because that opens a whole different door, right? Same concept, right? Of like, yo, I found this shit online. I mean, that was Wolfenstein. You know, for some people that was Doom. You know, I knew what Wolfenstein was, so I already kind of eagerly awaited the release of Doom when that game came out. That game finally came out. But, you know, Wolfenstein and some of the other stuff that was, you know, out around then, all that stuff from Apogee and Epic, back when Epic was making video games, you know, instead of just making people shake their head and go, you fucking people. You know, they were making high quality stuff like Epic Pinball and Jill of the Jungle, God damn it. And I suppose ZZT if you're a specific brand of maniac. Yeah, Soldat is another great example. Soldat is in some ways the original, you know, 2D side-scrolling competitive shooter, you know, where they're kind of taking some of the concepts of other, you know, first-person shooters of the day and, you know, converting it into a crazy side-scroller with a jetpack and all this stuff. And yeah, it's just a fantastic era. But GunZZZZ, the Duel, is a special brand of weird. And I think in this day and age, I don't think it stands a fucking chance, because nowadays people will go out of their way to learn the specific weirdness, and in order to enjoy that game, you're going to reach a point where you have to be a maniac to kind of outmaneuver the players that know that control, that know those acrobatics exactly the way they need to know them. You know, wall climbing with a sword and all the other diabolical shit you can do in that game. And so, you know, I think if you went to it and just like, hey, here's a simple thing and I can play it, I can run around and shoot, like, I don't know that it's going to be that kind of game. I joined a couple of matches over the weekend, and it was mostly people trying to teach each other how to fucking do the shit. Like, no, and if you pause it, it actually tells you, you know, there's like button prompts in like the tab window that's like, okay, if you want to do this with a sword, you need to hit attack, then space and W, and do this, and then do that over and over again. So they're kind of trying to teach you the movement inside of the game itself, and then also players are kind of like, again, I joined a team deathmatch and barely anyone was fighting because everyone was just standing around. It was weird. It was just bizarre, and I think they were just practicing the movement tech with each other on a voice chat somewhere else. It was a very, very weird vibe. But that playtest is going right now, and that's you know, in its own twisted way, that game is a fucking stone cold classic. From a weird era inside of a weird era, right? I mean, 2006 is the year before first-person shooters changed forever. And you know, not that, I mean, this is a third-person shooter, but competitive shooters, I guess I should say. It's a really weird game, and that's kind of the cool thing about it. But, you know, you have to be kind of a specific brand of weirdo, I think, to really truly excel at some of the insane acrobatics and movement tech that they want you to be able to do. And even, yes, maybe even remap your controls so that your scroll wheel is the attack button. It's really, yeah. People do some fucking warped shit in that game for sure. But it was nice to, even if I didn't get into any competitive matches because people were just like, I don't know, fiddle fucking around trying to jump on top of roofs and shit. I'm over here trying to shoot people. We're trying to help each other. What the fuck am I doing with my life? Anyway, it was nice to kind of see that thing still exists in some weird way. They tried to make a sequel at one point. Like, I'm sure there's just some insane, business stuff happening, over the years that made that game more obscure than it probably even should have been. But yeah, it sort of faded away before, I guess, like, I say faded away, but it really only gained an audience with, it was never like a big mainstream thing that people were talking about in the first place. So, especially again for a game that came out in 06, like 07, the idea of competitive shooters just became a completely different thing, for better or for worse. For better for a long time, maybe for worse these days, but modern warfare eventually comes for us all. I've also been playing Strange Scaffold's new game. Truck-kun is supporting me from another dimension, which is out now, finally. I've been kind of watching trailers and other stuff for that game for a little bit. It is an interesting game with a lot going on all at once. The main idea is that a delivery driver runs a lady over and kills her, but she actually gets teleported to some fucking RPG realm, and then you are soul-bound to help her. And how you help her is by running over more people, because that sends them to her world as monsters, where she can fight them and level up. Also, as you run over other objects in the world, it is mechanically dense. There's a lot happening all at once. So you are running people over so that she has more people to fight. You are running over objects because that levels up her attack so that she can fight them more quickly, and you need to honk your horn in order to kind of activate her ultimate attack. That's all happening in a tiny window at the bottom of the screen. You're actually driving a truck around a world, and also completing other objectives. You can deliver packages from point A to point B. It will also kind of continually shove objectives in your face, like you need to drive backwards for 100 meters. You need to drift for 10 seconds. You need to jump for 5 seconds. You hit 5 hedges, and all of that other stuff is happening all at the same time. And so you're kind of doing one thing to earn more time because there is an arcade style timer. It's this weird mix of, like, there's like kind of a big chunk of Crazy Taxi in here, I guess I would say, insofar as it is this, this open area, this city that you're driving around on a timer, and there are ways for you to earn more time up to a point, and then it eventually does just kind of like say, okay, you've done well on this run, you've hit max time, and now that's going to be that. But there is sort of all of that stuff happening on the surface, while also she is down there doing all these fights. And for everything you do, you're earning stars. And so the main chunk of the game is that you earning all of these stars to progress the story and kind of move things along. And so you get little bits of dialogue before and after a run that is around her, trying to... she's trying to come back to life because she has to work on Monday, as we all do. And it's a really wonderful concept that is, like, manic in a lot of the right ways. I think it's really fun in a, like, there's a bit of Carmageddon in there as well, but I as someone who played quite a bit of Carmageddon when that game came, I saw I mentioned this, there's a video up on YouTube of me playing this if you want to see it, and people tried to defend Carmageddon, to which I say, no thank you. Come on. Carmageddon was a very interesting idea when it came out because it had this idea of like, yo, man, you could fucking run people over. And you're like, yeah, I want to murder. But ultimately, Carmageddon doesn't really have enough going on. Truck-kun is supporting me from another dimension. You could argue has too much going on. And I think that's kind of fun about it because it lets you kind of focus on one thing for a while and then like, oh, wait, I need to do this. And, you know, like there is a bit, you get to a point with it where it doesn't quite become second nature, but you are flowing with it a little more freely. And I think the story bits of like this delivery driver just like blindly accepting like, oh, you need me to run over more people? Sure, I'll get down to it. I'll get right. Oh yeah, I'm right over there. Wait a minute. Are these people going to be? Are these people dead, or are we bringing them all back to life? And you know, I feel like there's a lot of room. I've not finished the game, but there is a lot of room in there for some really funny ways to end the experience based on like, I don't know. I'm trying to decide what would be funnier. I think it's funnier if like none of this is real. It's all in his head, and he is just a fucking murderer. And all of the anime tropes that are swirling around in his rotten brain are telling him to kill. But you know, we'll see. They're gonna add some stuff to it. There's like a locked menu for customization on there that I guess didn't make launch, but they're gonna patch that in pretty soon. So it seems like that more stuff will come to it over time. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. The city is fun to drive around, and it's been a neat time so far. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about brand new Virtual Boy games. Finally. Hey, catching hair loss early can make all the difference. The sooner you start, the better your options. Hims makes starting simple with a 100% online process and personalized treatment plans delivered straight to you. Hims offers convenient access to a range of prescription hair loss treatments with ingredients that work, including chews, oral medications, serums, and sprays. Prescription strength ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil can help prevent further hair loss and regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself, you know? Hims brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. So find the right hair regrowth treatment for you. With flexible subscription options, access to 24/7 provider support, and once-a-day treatment options that fit your daily routine. It's straightforward, it's transparent, and it's designed to make getting care feel easy. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/Jeff. That's hims.com/Jeff for your free online visit. hims.com/Jeff. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Individual results may vary. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. The Virtual Boy, everyone loves it. Everyone had one back in the day. They were the fad toy. Everyone had yo-yos and Pokemon cards and Pogs and a Virtual Boy, right? Like everyone had a Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy came back, what was that, earlier this year? Nintendo released a housing for the Switch and Switch 2 that you could put your Switch into and then hold up to your eyes, and then they released emulated versions of Virtual Boy games that you could play in the original 3D. I guess I should say, if you're not familiar with what a Virtual Boy is, it was a mid-90s device, not quite a console, but certainly not a handheld, that was a 3D set of goggles that you leaned your head into. You couldn't really pick them up and hold them. It didn't strap to your face, at least not by default. You could certainly build your own strap if you're a real sick person, but it was meant to be like sat on a table and then you hunch back, lean into it, and play, let's say about 10 games. I don't know, like how many Virtual Boy games are there? 20? Not 20. 25, 20, like somewhere in the 20-ish yeah, 18. Yeah. Anyway, I really like the audio hardware in the Virtual Boy. I say this every time it comes up because I think that that it's the audio, the music sounds really nice. On the Virtual Boy, it reminds me of the TurboGrafx 16 audio hardware at times, which always has there's a pleasant tone to it that it has. But the Virtual Boy, you know, everything was red. It was not a colored display, and it was just kind of this ridiculous device. It was cool that it did 3D, which was the only hook it really had, as you looked into it and it was a 3D image. But you know, just not a lot of very good games. 2 more games joined the roster this week for the Nintendo Switch Online recreation of the Virtual Boy. And these 2 games are unreleased video games from the original era. These games are both copyrighted 1996 when you load them up. And yeah, there are 2 more Virtual Boy games, which is kind of awesome. And the sad, it's like a sad thing because like both of these games are pretty good, or they seem pretty good so far. And so it's this weird future that never was, where you're like, man, what if they had continued on and made this second wave, this other wave of Virtual Boy games? And the reality is the Virtual Boy, the die had been cast. No one was going to buy, like, these 2 games would not have changed the fortune of the Virtual Boy. It would not have been like, oh, now it's a success because we got more games. Like people had voted with their wallet, voted with their like desire to not have a weird headache from staring into this thing for a long period of time. And they said no thank you to the Virtual Boy. I said this last time it came up, but it was easy to see at the time that the Virtual Boy was not going to be a success. They showed it off pre-release. Nintendo had kiosks set up with Teleroboxer and Red Alarm, which were 2 of the early games for the system. And I spent some time with it, and just even in my first, 45 minutes, or probably not even that long, really, because it's a demo at a trade show, right? But even after spending time playing whatever demo they had for Teleroboxer and Red Alarm and whatever else, it was just easy to come away from it and go like, yeah, that's really neat. I don't want to do this ever again. Like, no one's going to do this. Why would anyone ever do this? This is not going to be a thing. And sure enough, it was not. The 2 games, one is called Dragon Hopper, formerly sometimes occasionally known as D-Hopper, which is a lot more fun to say for all you D-Hoppers out there. And Dragon Hopper has an Intelligent Systems copyright on it as well, which is fun, kind of in the weird, this pantheon of like Nintendo games. It's this interesting little look into like, oh yeah, this is what they were working on back then. Dragon Hopper reminds me of the shitty 3D maze game for the Master System 3D glasses, whose name escapes me right now. But I'm going to look it up. Is it called? Oh, heck. Maze Hunter 3D. Yeah, Maze Hunter 3D. Or Maze Walker in Japan. Yes, Maze Hunter 3D. So it's a top-down shot. And you're a dragon, and you can go around and collect items and eventually get off into fights and do stuff. You also have a jump button, and since it's 3D, this works. You can jump up, and there are platforms that are up in the air, and so you're kind of like jumping up levels, but you're seeing the whole thing from the top down. And which is if you're playing this game in 2D through whatever nefarious means have come your way, it is a little underwhelming, but in full 3D, it lines up and makes sense in a way that you're like, oh, this is actually really neat for what it is, being able to jump around and you can kind of float and glide while you're in the air, and so the movement in it is surprisingly cool, I guess I would say. The other game is like more interesting, and I think in some ways more tragic. It is called Zero Racers, and Zero Racers is effectively an F-Zero game. I guess at some point in development, much like the other game was known as D-Hoppers, this was known as G-Zero for a brief period of time in development. And it is a wireframe, fully kind of 3D racing game, very much set in the F-Zero world, like the vehicles and like you see it, and it's named Falcon, and just the menu design and the UI design and everything else about it is like it looks like the follow-up to F-Zero, which is fucking crazy when you think about like characters are in this game that did not show up until, I guess, what was it? I mean, it would have been F-Zero X, right? Like that was the N64 game would have ended up being the next F-Zero game. And so there are characters in this that, because this game got canceled, technically make their official debut in that N64 game. And so it's this weird piece of the continuity that was covered to some extent. Like there were previews, you saw little bits of information. Like the games are finished video games, practically. Maybe there's some bits about it that they would have tweaked or changed if they had more time or whatever. But like when you play them, it's not like it's full of debug information and nonsense and it's crashing or what. Like these feel like, at a minimum, these are like review builds of the games or something. Like they got very close to being finished. And different as a difference from F-Zero, you can actually go up and down. So you are in a tunnel. It is sort of a tunnel racer. But you are picking up turbo boosts. You are hitting things in the middle of the course that give you a speed boost that help you to kind of, blast forward and blast past some of the other guys. You can kind of glide around a little bit to take turns and like it feels really nice. Like the frame rate is not awesome because it's a fucking Virtual Boy game. And so it doesn't have like the greatest sense of speed or anything. But as far as like this kind of like vector graphics looking tunnel that is coming at you and twisting and turning and stuff, it looks fucking rad. And in 3D, you're like, that's really cool. Like you see the twists and turns coming from some amount of distance. The draw distance is not incredible, but you do see this stuff coming your way, and you're racing against these other vehicles and kind of doing your thing, and it's pretty good. It doesn't. I don't think that I played it for a little while last night. Like these just kind of dropped. Like today is meant to be the day that they're out. And so I was hunched over the fucking Switch 2. Ugh, God. Stupid thing. But yes, they could use a little more music, a little more presentation type stuff, but it's cool. It's cool, as they say.
It's cool.
And I don't know. It in some ways it's a shame that these never came out, but if they had come out then, no one would have cared. No one would have appreciated them. They would have just been two more. They might as well have been lost to time. They could have released in 96 and no one would have ever noticed. And so in some strange way, by releasing, 30 years later, they're going to end up getting like much more attention than I think they ever would have received had they just been released and shoved out like any other Virtual Boy game was at the time. Which is a strange world that we live in now, that's a situation, right? I still think that Nintendo's solution for Virtual Boy games on the Switch is absolute nonsense. Like, they don't let you play them in 2D mode, and so you have to buy their, or there's like different varieties of it. You can get the shitty one or the good one, and then there's a different one if you have a Switch 1 or a Switch 2. Like, this whole idea of buying this plastic shell with the lenses and everything you need to kind of turn your Switch into a freaking Virtual Boy is absolute nonsense. It is one of the craziest things that anyone could do. And I guess you have to applaud them in some disgusting way, once again, for not only doing this, but at the time they did announce, like, hey, we've got some games upcoming, including some unreleased games. So this has kind of been the plan all along. And they followed through on it. And it's a very warped thing to have done. And I appreciate, I wonder what sort of resistance was faced internally at Nintendo when someone came up with this idea to like, no, we're going to bring back the Virtual Boy. I wonder if there was like a good chunk of people that were like, no, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you do this? Like, no, what if this is stupid? What? It's great that they did it. It's fantastic that they did it. In some sick way, this is like a better way to play Virtual Boy games than owning an actual Virtual Boy. Because once you're done, you can pull the Switch 2 out of the Virtual Boy case and play other fucking video games on it. So that helps a lot. And, you know, hey, they sold, I don't know how many of, I wonder how many they sold. I wonder how many people are broken inside enough to say, oh, yeah, no, I need to buy the Virtual Boy shell. I have a Virtual Boy sitting here in this fucking very room. And I said, no, yeah, I need to get, yeah, I should probably get one of these fucking shells so that I can play Virtual Boy games. I don't think the Virtual Boy is good. In fact, I know it to be bad, but I should probably buy one of these. And they wanted $100 for those things. And from me, they got it. I ain't proud of it, but I have to respect the sickness, the sickness that they have spread once again. That they had enough of a sickness to bring this thing to market. I feel okay rewarding that disgusting illness with whatever money I gave them for. Not only, you know, you can't even buy these games, which is dumb. Which I don't know, whatever. But you buy the plastic shell and then you still have to subscribe to the highest tier of Nintendo's online service to play them. And so now some small part of your subscription money goes to the idea of you being able to play Virtual Boy games. And that's also just fucking terrible, dude. Like, what is going on? The world is disgusting. But that said, these two games are pretty good. And it's very neat to be able to play unreleased Virtual Boy games. Like they did it with Star Fox 2, right? Like this is exactly what they did when they released Star Fox 2 after all those years. And so the idea that Nintendo of all companies, which has always been overly secretive and overly precious about their place in the world and the creative process and just like everything else that they have done and how they have done it, it doesn't line up with them doing this. Releasing Star Fox 2 after all these years, bringing these Virtual Boy games out. And I think that that's fucking awesome. And so at least there's that. Yeah, they should Dinosaur Planet next. Now they should actually Echo Delta should be yes, and Super Donkey. The nice thing they have with these three games they've done this for, these two Virtual Boy games and for Star Fox 2, is that the games were pretty much done. Right? Like this was not a case of them going and, oh, we're going to finish this game and develop it. And it wasn't them saying, oh, we're going to release these completely unfinished prototypes and put them out there. And they're not, they're going to be broken and they're not full games. They're not finishable, like whatever. Here's a handful of levels of an idea we had or whatever. Like these were games that just, for a variety of reasons, actually for kind of the same reason, didn't come out. Like they did not release the Virtual Boy games because they were done with the Virtual Boy. It was 96 and they were like, okay, yeah, there's no point in releasing a Virtual Boy game. Retailers don't want it. The players don't want it. Everyone has moved on. This is stupid. Star Fox 2, exact same situation. Hey, yeah, this game's pretty much done, but it's way too late. We are moving on to new hardware. And putting out Star Fox 2 into this market when, polygonal gaming has already kind of moved forward. Like it's not like the Star Fox 1 situation where you see it and you say, wow, by the time Star Fox 2 would have actually hit shelves, you would have seen it and said, this looks slow and old, and there's so many better platforms out there for this type of game. And see you later. Oh yeah, I guess Earthbound. I guess Earthbound is kind of, Earthbound fits this bill as well. Earthbound has its own weird reasons for for that stuff. But like, as much as I want to play Echo Delta. My understanding is that someone will eventually that may eventually be possible for the public one of these days here. I don't know when or where, but there is a preserved copy of Echo Delta out there. Echo Delta was a game I played at Space World. I went to Japan, and they had Echo Delta on display. I wrote a hands-on preview of it, and then the game got canceled. You're this tiny little tank thing, and you're underwater, and you're kind of on the sea floor going around. And it actually, like, it felt pretty good, a little top-down kind of thing. It didn't seem like a finished game. But I don't know. I don't know how far along that game got into development before they killed it. But it was a neat little thing. You're like, oh, this is like kind of this arcadey sort of deal, and like there's something kind of cool about this. And I remember really liking it for what it was, but it never, it never made its way out. But yeah, my understanding is that at some point here, it might. Not in an official, Nintendo is probably not going to put it out, but someone, I think, will eventually let the world take a crack at that thing. Recyclable Psy asks, how big was Space World? Like, were there enough games for a convention? Yeah, so Space World was like open to the public, and much like Tokyo Game Show, it was not as big as Tokyo Game Show. It didn't take up all of the halls or anything like that, but I remember sticking mostly to Nintendo's own area, but third parties were setting up booths. There was a really big family area, and so one of the other halls was devoted to kind of like the kids zone, and that's where they had people dressed up as mascots and Pikachus and whatever else, as well as like a bunch of kids games and third party stuff that would be okay for kids. And that was really, I think, the busiest part of the show. But yeah, Nintendo just had a handful of kiosks, in a booth-like environment, and yeah, third parties, I believe, did show up there as well. I'm just trying to remember, that was the only time I ever went to Space World. I think it was the last. That may very well have been the last Space World that they had, because Nintendo, for whatever reason, didn't want to show games at Tokyo Game Show. And because they had their own show. And so Space World, Shoshinkai, all of these other weird things that you read about in magazines, were various, attempts for companies to show off games in Japan. Yeah, I don't know. When Space World went away, Nintendo did not then start showing games at Tokyo Game Show. They just kind of stopped showing games. Yeah. Darren in the chat says, I remember going to the Nintendo breakfast in London for the GameCube. I saw Iwata playing Pikmin, and I had no idea who he was at the time. Yeah. I went to London for a Nintendo thing, or I don't know if it was specifically just for a Nintendo thing, or if they happened to be having an event at the same time as ECTS. ECTS was the trade show that happened there. And I think even ECTS got replaced by something else. Anyway, I went to a Nintendo event in London, and they were showing off the Pokemon Mini. And I don't know how I ended up there, but I ended up there and met some guys who were working for the BBC, and we were hanging out, and then they just introduced the Pokemon Mini and had a bunch of cartridges. I think the entire library. I don't know. There wasn't like a big long development cycle for fucking Pokemon Mini games. But they showed the Pokemon Mini off and had a bunch of the games there. And it was just it was like one of those things that I think about and go like, why the fuck was I in London? Like, did I go out there specifically for this? Was it like Nintendo's going to show a new console? And then like, okay, I need to go out there and see whatever the new thing is. And then it was Pokemon Mini. Pokemon Mini's kind of neat for what it is, but it's such a strange fucking device. And it's just like, again, as someone who's only been to London like 2 or 3 times, I think the last time was in 2001. No, that's not true. The last time I went for like a trade show thing was 2001, but I went for that Bethesda thing where they showed Wet. Anyway, long story short, I don't think Nintendo has a ton of video games out there that are completely finished and ready to be like released as new things. But I wouldn't mind, like, and I'm used to this sort of stuff, and if you emulate on a regular basis, you probably are too. But there are a ton of prototypes and half finished games that are just out there online nowadays. And I would not be opposed. I certainly would not be opposed to Nintendo dipping into that a little bit, as long as they found a way to contextualize it properly. And I don't know how you do that, without modifying the software itself or something, but like it needs to have some kind of like historical presentation to it. Like this would be a thing, like if they wanted to do a lot of it, Digital Eclipse, giving it that type of treatment would be really neat for something like this. Nintendo would probably never do that. But something that contextualized, like, hey, what you're about to play is like it's a fucking fucked up level. Like it's super donkey. Like this is not even a fucking game. And the reason we made this is because we were doing this and this and this. I think that would be really great if they wanted to dip into some of the other stuff that they have had come and go. Yeah, because then you get your dinosaur planets, and I don't know. There's really not that many. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like Nintendo games that didn't make it to market, but were shown in some way, shape, or form. Right? It's like there was that baseball game. Was it Pennant Race or something? There was a baseball game they had that they killed at some point. I know that's very vague. There was Project Hammer, sure, I guess. Yeah. There's the Super Donkey stuff. There's the original Conker, which would be probably hard for them to release without talking to Microsoft at this point, I guess. But gosh, yeah, Donkey Kong Racing for GameCube. Yeah, God, yuck. I feel like in a lot of these cases we probably dodged bullets, right? When you think about how fucking terrible Diddy Kong Racing is, did you really want a Donkey Kong Racing game? No, you did not. No, you absolutely did not. Yeah, like prototypes of Eternal Darkness, and yeah, sure. There's definitely there's a bunch of weird little things out there that might not have had a lot in them, right? And these prototypes might not be in situations where there's that much to see. It could be like a 5-minute little thing of your Kirby air rides and whatnot, where you just look at it and go like, oh yeah, okay, sure. Look at this. This is like a 5-minute little thing. There's and there's just weirder stuff out there. Like there's a 64DD version of Mario 64 that is out there now that I think they just made as like a, hey, can we get this game to boot off a disc instead of a cartridge? I don't think it's anything special per se, but like that got out at some point. And so you can see that it's kind of pointless. It's Mario 64, but the words disc version blinks on the screen at the title. Yeah. A lot of little things like that would be kind of fun to just kind of be able to revisit. But I don't think Nintendo has quite the library of finished games just sitting around that they could re-release, or that they could release for the first time, I suppose, like they did with these Virtual Boy games. But I would love for them to do more like this if they could, because this is it's wonderful. Even taken in the context of their Virtual Boy games, and you got to buy this plastic shell, or you got to get a shell for your Switch, and like all of the nonsense hoops that you have to jump through to theoretically enjoy these games. It is still really rad that they did that. Yeah, they should do more of that if they can. Let's take one more break. We'll come back. We'll get into the news. You know about Ridge. Ridge makes amazing power banks, wallets, luggage, and premium everyday gear. Well, Ridge is back with their legendary sweepstakes for the 6th year, and this time it's bigger than ever. The sweepstakes runs through July 24th through September 8th. Tony Hawk is the official spokesperson this year, so that's cool. Everyone loves Tony Hawk, and everyone loves a high-quality power bank. 2 lucky winners will get to choose between a Lamborghini Huracan Starato, a Ford Hennessy Velociraptor, a souped-up Ford Bronco, or $100,000 in cash. I don't know what I feel. I don't really want a car that if I was going to get a car at this point, I get an electric car. I'd probably take the cash. You know what? I bet the car is worth more than. I bet you'd sell the. I don't know. You got to figure it out. You got to do some math there, because I bet you'd sell the car for more than the cash, huh? You know, there's only 1,500 Lamborghini Huracan Staratos that exist, and Ridge is giving you the chance to own one. It's the world's first off-road supercar. It's a naturally aspirated V10. It has 610 horsepower. That's fun. The Hennessy Velociraptor has 558 horsepower. It's got twin turbo. It's like an American muscle car put into an all-terrain truck. Or hey, there's a custom-built Bronco coated in scratch-resistant Kevlar armor and riding high on massive 37-inch off-road tires. I bet those will be completely affordable to replace when you need new tires. The best part? You can enter this sweepstakes completely for free at Ridge.com. Take your shot. Get going. Ridge.com. And if you want to boost your chances, you can earn additional entries by buying some stuff from Ridge during the sweepstakes. Whether it's a power bank, a wallet, luggage, or, hey, something else you've had your eye on, you will earn extra entries with your purchase. Like Ridge's power bank. It's built for modern life. It's Lightning, USB-C, wireless charging. It's got built-in cables, MagSafe compatibility, and up to 3 full phone charges. It's very convenient. If you're out there in the world and you need to charge a thing, it'll do it. They've also got their most refined wallet yet. I'm, of course, talking about the Ridge 2.0. It's 10% lighter, more modular, and designed to pair perfectly with their new tracker card, which works with Apple Find My. That's the full name, Apple Find My. I don't know why Apple named it that way. They just did. You can track your wallet. You can make it make noise when it's nearby if you can't find it, and get alerts if it moves out of range. Ready to upgrade your wallet and maybe your ride? For a limited time only, head to Ridge.com and use the code JeffG at checkout for 10% off your order and a chance to win Ridge's biggest sweepstakes ever. A Lamborghini Huracan Starato, a Hennessy Velociraptor, a Ford Bronco, or $100,000 in cash. No purchase necessary to enter, but remember, every dollar you spend gets you more entries. That's Ridge.com and use JeffG as the code. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the show. Let them know we sent you. And on with the news. This week will mark the release of this fighting game, this Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. They have issued... They've said, hey, so that PC version of the game, we got some patches. We hear you. Every match you played every match you played taught us something. And we're heads down making sure Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls delivers at launch and beyond to our PC players. Message received. If you remember the beta, I couldn't even get the beta to launch on PC. And it coincided with the PSN server outage, which is not awesome, but it had multiple error pop-ups every time I tried to launch it, so I eventually just gave up. And so that's a great beta. To our PC players, message received. I guess, yeah, sure. What else are you toking on over there? With the weed. The team is already hard at work on the performance you deserve, with improvements lined up for day one. They have some bullet points here. Reducing overall CPU usage to improve performance. So yeah, like I had bugs and the game wouldn't launch. But I guess other people were able to get in game and discovered that it just ran like shit. So that's bad. For all games, but for fighting games, especially competitive ones, that's not, you don't want that. I've been playing Angel Eyes because I like real fighting games, but we'll see. Fixing frame rate drops and lag, resolving an issue causing unnecessary shader compilation at startup, improving compatibility when streaming with OBS and Discord, addressing rollback netcode and crossplay issues. We are also working on fixes for a number of other reported issues. So, yeah, I don't know. That beta seems to, it sounds like people on PlayStation did not have any problems with it, and people are, people seem more optimistic about it than I would have thought based on how that last beta went. Everyone keeps saying that, the game's a lot better than it was in that beta. They really changed a lot about it, and so I am very curious to check it out. It's out in like 2 days. So we'll see. Oh, it's a little under 2 days. 1 day and 21 hours as of this recording. And I'm curious to see what they ended up doing with it, because it looks really nice. I don't know. I really like the look of the models. I'm not even like a big Marvel guy, but it's the stuff they have done with those character designs, I think, looks really awesome. And so I want to, I already want to like this game, but there are a lot of other things stacked up against it that I'm like, it's unlikely that this is going to be my next fighting game, but I sure do want to play some of it and see how that goes. Also in fighting game related news, today is the day for Yasmin in Street Fighter 6. My daughter will be very thrilled. I have not told her, but she saw the trailer for Yasmin and was very excited about it and thought that she looked cool. So, I guess yesterday. I guess technically Yasmin was out yesterday, but either way, she looks neat. So yeah, we'll see how all of that goes. In the news, Dave Batista. That's right. You know him. You love him. And he may play Kratos in the God of War series. This has to be a fucking bummer. So they cast Kratos. They cast this guy, Ryan Hurst, according to Deadline.com. And apparently this guy got hurt. He tore his bicep doing a stunt while they were filming. And so they had... you get cast for the role. You're shooting for like a while. This isn't like day one of the shoot. But you're like, yeah, dog, I'm Kratos. Sick. And then he tears a bicep. And then apparently there's going to be like a lengthy recovery time. Like it's, he needed surgery after that tear and needed time to recover. And so they just said like, yeah, man. All right, we're going to just replace you with someone else and reshoot the whole thing. That has to fucking suck. If you're that dude, like already you tore your bicep and that probably sucks. But then to be like, oh, shit. And I lost the job on account of my bicep getting torn while shooting your dumb fucking TV show with your stupid fucking angry dad. What the fuck? And so Batista is apparently in talks to maybe take on that role. Deadline notes here, Batista's extensive background as a decorated professional wrestler would allow him to step into a physically demanding role such as Kratos with limited preparation given the tight schedule. What's more, he's coming off of shooting a similarly physical fantasy project to the new Highlander movie, which required him to bulk up. Yeah, there's been, if you've seen Batista lately, that dude's an actor now. He's acting. He's getting big. He's getting small, depending on what roles he's doing. And so if he is on the bigger side of things because he just shot Highlander, then maybe he is indeed ready to do a Kratos. I think that if you had to cast a Kratos, Dave Batista seems like an okay choice for that. Also, I think Batista's a pretty good actor. I don't know, like he was a fine wrestler. I think he's done a lot of good stuff. Like he seems like a solid dude, and that's kind of nice. And also, what if he ends up, what if they eventually make a Gears of War movie and he ends up playing both Marcus Phoenix and Kratos? That would be, I don't know. That would be great. I don't know. I think he is the perfect choice for doing a Gears of War. Of the GOW franchises, I think that he is better suited for Gears of War than he is for Kratos. But I don't know, whatever. You can put that fucking makeup, whatever, man. He could do a Kratos. He'd be fine. Also, the idea of a God of War TV show just strikes me as fucking questionable to begin with. So, at the end of the day, who fucking cares? Speaking of people that don't care, PlayStation got out there and had their earnings call where they talked about how things are going over at PlayStation. Of course, during the Q&A session in this earnings call, they someone asked them like, "Hey, so you getting rid of these discs? People seem pissed. What's going on with that?" And so the answer fell to Lynn Tao, who was Sony's CFO. And she didn't really say much. She said exactly what you would expect to be said in an earnings call when talking about a recent announcement. And the quotes here, these quotes, I believe, have been translated. This comes to us from videogameschronicle.com. Okay, Sony had an interpreter, so they did do, I guess, an English language translation themselves. She said, "We announced that from January 2028 onwards, we will no longer be manufacturing game discs. So we announced it 1.5 years ahead. There are various reasons we made this decision, the biggest being that digitalization of contents overall has been progressing. That's the big factor. It's not just for PlayStation, but for all kinds of content, digitalization is progressing." Which is a fun, I'm sure, some stuff gets translated and can sound a little weird on the other end, right? But digitalization is progressing I'm just trying to get digital. And so when we think about the future, to continue her quote here, "We put a lot of thought and time and we cautiously considered this and we came to this conclusion and we're going to cautiously move forward. To this decision, we have received various opinions and people have strong views and we understand that the community has put forward those views to us. Games are loved by many people. It's a form of entertainment that's loved by people, and it's connected to people's fond memories in many cases. And so we understand those emotions. We want to consider that. And in the future digital ecosystem, how do we engage the gamers is something that we would like to continue to explore." Again, it is the perfect, non-answer of just yeah, no, yes. She's almost recapping the announcement for people that didn't hear it, right? And she recapped it in Japanese, and then it got translated into English, and then came out the other end sounding like a lot of nothing. That's not me saying that in the original Japanese it is full of meaning and whatever else, but the Q&As at these earnings calls are not going to be a place where they're going to engage with this community directly. And the one of the dumb things here, I don't know, dumb is maybe a little harsh, but the community of people who were angry about Sony's move into all digital took this statement as this is what they said to us. I can't believe this is what I'm even more mad. This was not targeted at you. This was something they said to shareholders where they basically are halfway just recapping the situation of just there's more, more people are getting things digitally and we're moving in that direction. Yes. Thank you for your question. That is we've heard some feedback on it, and we're gonna move forward cautiously. Is not some big dramatic statement about them trying to shove you. It's almost worse in a way, because to the people that are out there angry about it, they have said precisely zero. They're not talking to you about it. There's nothing to say, right? They told you everything they are going to tell you about it. This is the thing they're doing. They're going to do it in a year and a half. You know? And so I don't know what people are expecting. Like if they want someone to sit down with them and go like, well, hey buddy, here's our bar chart that you already don't believe. And so we're going to walk you through it again, pal. All right, let's turn that frown upside down and let's go click these buttons and download these video games. Like they're not going to walk people through it any further than they have. And it's difficult to see them reversing course on this, you know, because they've already started heading down this road pretty dramatically. Again, you know, if this turns into a situation where they are massively losing money, mind share, like if there is a metric that changes because of this, and that metric is more than just, wow, we're getting a lot more comments on our videos. What do the comments say? It's not important. We're getting a lot more comments on our videos. Engagement is up. If there is an actual metric that then they have to go back into these earnings calls and say, well, this number is down 20%, and I think, you know, like people are disenfranchised by a thing, and we think it's because of this, and like if there is actual damage done to their business, then that is something that maybe they will have to address. But as I was talking about last week, I think that them addressing it would not necessarily result in the return of physical games. I think their first attempt to address this would and will be changes to their service offering, changes to whether that's refund policy or changes to the way that digital games are sold, or can they be lent to someone else, like something about the rights, the digital rights and how they are managed, if you will. I could see them making some changes around that to make that process somewhat more consumer friendly. And I think that's something they absolutely have to do in order to go this route fully, in order to go all in on no discs. I think that their service offering needs to improve quite a bit. Just from a, you know, not even from an outrage perspective, but from just a baseline running a business sort of thing. You're going to have a lot more people that'll be like, hey, my fucking account got banned and now all of my purchases are locked up in this. You need to fucking fix me right now. This can't be some runaround customer service thing where I get, you know, like there's tons of people that contact Sony customer service or even Xbox, you know, this isn't necessarily limited to them, and just get fucking blown off like, yeah, I don't know, man, your account just doesn't work anymore. You're going to have to make a new one. Like that's like unacceptable today. It will only become more unacceptable as they go further down this road. And so I do think that they do need to have better options there before they actually pull the trigger on this in 2028. But that's not them reversing it, right? And I think if people want this reversed, I just don't think that's where we're going to go. It's tempting to, you know, like if they had been able to keep drives around, I guess that's kind of the other thing is the way I always thought this would go is, okay, physical games are largely going away. The drives will be something that will not come stock on the console. And if you want one, you can get one. And if you want games on disc, boutique companies will produce small, limited runs of games for people like you. And they'll come with a fun statue that you can put on a shelf, well, right next to the game that you don't put in the drive ever because the server for that game got shut down 9 months ago. But, you know, like it seemed like that would be the way for them to go. And to me, if we're thinking realistically, to me, that is the most you can hope for. If you want Sony to sway back on this stuff, I do not think I don't think there's going to be a big enough problem for them, a big enough storm for them that they will go back all the way and be like, yep, all right, more discs. Sorry, fuck. I think they end up doing it, at most they do a situation where it's like, okay, we've created some kind of accommodation to run discs, but we're not gonna make them. If other companies want to do small batch runs, then okay. But even then, the amount of engineering that would have to go into making sure that those discs can't be easily pirated and can't be this and that, like that's all work they don't want to have to fucking do for the PS6, And so any situation where they have to like support a drive of any manner, of any kind of capacity, becomes a scenario where they then have to sit down and go like, okay, like what can we do to make sure that these discs can't be burned? What can we put into these drives to make sure that they cannot be reverse engineered in such a way that you can trick it into, you can make an ODE out of it, and like all of the other stuff that, to be fair, that's all stuff that they have largely solved with the PS5. Ultra Hunt says, how about doing away with copy protection? Yeah, that's sure. Yeah, let's just let anyone burn a disc. Let's make it very casual and easy. That'll very clearly work for them in that environment. It's just not realistic. Like, they need to put up some kind of roadblock. Again, it's not about stopping 100% of all piracy. It's about stopping the most casual piracy. That's all this stuff was ever designed to do. When you have a Dreamcast situation where any idiot can just burn a disc and fucking go, that ends up being bad in the console space for modern current consoles. It's why, the PlayStation, when the PlayStation 1 mod chips started coming out, you had to solder a fucking mod chip into it, which a lot of people are not going to do. And at the time, I guess, in some ways, burning discs has become esoteric and arcane all over again. Like, no one has a fucking drive to do that shit. So maybe it would not be that big of a deal anymore. But ultimately, yeah, I don't see a world in which Sony goes all the way back on this. I just don't. That's not to say that they shouldn't or whatever, but when I think about, when you think about where they're at with this stuff and the direction that everything seems to be heading in and where the numbers fall, it continues to look that way. And it will be very interesting to see, like, hey, are all of these people going to not buy Grand Theft Auto? Because if you wanted a poster child for this thing, like, that is kind of your first big shot, right? Like, that's a major video game. Video games don't get much more major than that when we talk about console games and disc-based games and all of this other stuff over the last 20 years or more. Like, that's a franchise that people lined up at midnight for, and have fond memories of doing so. And so when that one comes around, will people stick to that? And that's not something that represents in the sales, because obviously GTA brings a bunch of new players out of the woodwork, assuming they can afford any of this shit to begin with. But, and so it's not necessarily about like, oh, GTA didn't sell very well because no one bought it. Like, it'd be foolish to expect that. I think even if every single person who had voiced their opinion about the PlayStation stuff online, I think if every single one of those people didn't buy GTA, it probably would not make a big enough dent, but it would probably be noticeable. It would probably be a first example of just like, oh, geez, Well, GTA's fine, but what about my game? What about the game I'm going to ship next year? What about, like these other studios? Like, that's where the pressure ultimately would have to come from, right? Because I think if third parties were like, hey, like, GTA was fine, but, we're putting out Madden next year, and we're putting out, fucking whatever else, the next UFC game, like, publishers the size of EA and Take-Two and Ubisoft to a certain extent. Ubisoft needs to be able to say, like, hey, like, we're putting out a new Far Cry, and like, it's not going to do GTA numbers. And so if all of these people don't show up, this is now like material to us. This matters to us in a way that, like, we need you to fix it. We would much rather have you fix it than to completely eliminate used games or whatever. And I don't know that they'll ever take that. I don't know that they'll ever take that route, right? I don't know that enough of those third parties will feel the pinch enough to do that or to want to do that or whatever, because they sell most of their games digitally too. So at some point, just the numbers just don't seem to be there. But I guess like point being is like I don't think that people should be getting riled up about this earnings call conversation about this stuff, because this was not meant to be some kind of big piece of feedback about the uproar. This was just them kind of addressing like, yeah, we're aware, to shareholders. It was like, oh yeah, we're on top of that. Yeah, no, we know. And that's it. If anything, you should be more angry about the part where they have said absolutely nothing about it. That is the indication that at the end of the day, while they can say to shareholders like, oh yeah, we're being cautious about this, and yeah, they'll have to be cautious about how they talk about it next time or whatever when the time comes, but like they don't care about what you're doing enough to to make a change. I'm sure there are privately some people internally at the company that are just like, ugh. And I'm sure they have to have social media guidelines that are just like, hey, when we talk about stuff in the future, like they're probably rewriting those right now because they live in a new reality where it's like, we're getting fucking hammered for this shit. So don't use language like this, use language like this, like it's just at some point that's just normal big company bullshit. It's not even crisis PR, it's just PR.
Movie news.
Meanwhile, the price of the Xbox went up. They had not revealed what this price increase was going to be in the United Kingdom and in Europe. And so it's a bit of a shock for folks there. They had announced these changes for the US a little while ago. And if you forgot what that was, the 512 gig Series S is going up by $100, and the 1 terabyte series models go up by $150. And they're discontinuing the 2 terabyte model completely. And so people went and looked at those US price increases and said like, oh, okay, if you translate that to euros and pounds, it looks like this. The actual increases, however, are more than that. This is according to IGN.com. Your home for imagining things. Your home for the Imagine network. Your home for imagining games in a network of some kind. The 512 gigabyte Series S has gone from £299 to $429, which they note is an increase of £130. The 1 terabyte model goes from $349 to $519, which is a leap of £170. And that's just for Series S. The Series X models, the 1 terabyte digital, so no disk drive slot, goes from $449 to $619. That's an increase of £170. And the 1 terabyte model with a disk goes from $449 to $669, which is £220. They did the math on that. That's a 48% increase for the Xbox you already weren't buying. The Euro situation is not really any better here. Like that expensive, that most expensive, that Series X 1 terabyte with a disk drive went from 599 euros to 799 euros. Yeah, I don't even like it's insane. It's fucking insane. And components cost what they cost, right? I can't sit here and say, oh, they shouldn't have done this. Because ultimately, they are at the whim of this stuff to an extent. But this is an insane jump. This is bad for video games. I don't know. Like we've talked about it every week for the past, 2 years now. It continues to be the shits, and the end is not in sight. Everyone is saying that, like, hey, Realistically, we're not going to see any relief on RAM availability until 2028, which if you were building a new Xbox or a PlayStation 6 or whatever is probably good news because that's when they're going to make those. And so perhaps... Nah, who the fuck am I kidding? Nah, this whole thing's fucked, man. This whole thing's fucked. It's completely... There's no... I don't know, man. Because it's not like 2028 is going to roll around and a new factory is going to start spitting out RAM and then the prices are just going to fucking drop immediately. If anything, there's going to probably, if nothing happens between now and then, which there's always these little signs of like, there's a lot more discussion nowadays. It's not just retvrning. Like the conversation around AI being a bubble and the data center and how wildly unpopular the build out of data centers around the United States, how intensely unpopular that has become on every side of every political aisle. Like, no one fucking wants this shit. When you dig into it, it does not seem like the demand is actually there. And that's where you start to talk about it like it's a bubble, because all of this is this circular fucking nonsense and these fucking idiots jacking each other off for fucking AI fucking compute instead of fucking actual demand from consumers. And I don't know, man. The whole thing is it just seems intensely fake. So, that will resolve one way or another eventually. But I fear that by the time it actually does resolve, it's going to crash and take down enough of the economy that the last thing we're going to be worrying about is like, can we afford a PlayStation 6? Anyway, I hope you're having a good week. The price increase of the Xbox was not met favorably by fans. Meanwhile, Microsoft had an earnings call of their own. The Xbox division not doing great. Not a big surprise there, but they are down. Hardware revenue is down 13% compared to the last year's Q4. So this is not Q4 calendar. This is Q4 fiscal, which is Q1 calendar, which is anyway. For the January to March quarter, year over year, they're down 13% on hardware. Content and services revenue declined to 10% compared to, according to videogameschronicle.com. None of this is shocking, right? As the Xbox has not necessarily been in great shape. And while they did have like a decent little month there right before the price increase on the hardware, this is not something that is, heading in the right direction. And so after the earnings call, Asha Sharma, who is heading up all of Xbox at Microsoft, got out there and said, they did see new players trying services for the first time in the past fiscal year, but that hasn't resulted in notable growth. And she notes that there's an expectation that the company would return to growth, that they would start seeing growth again at Xbox by the end of fiscal year 2027. But sorry, I was saying January to March. Their year ends June, at the end of June. And so what she's saying is that by this time next year, they will have returned to growth. In the earnings call, Nadella kind of talked about the decline and did kind of note that, like, hey, they're in the middle of making drastic changes to that business. The quote here that VGC has is, when it comes to Xbox, we are making the necessary decisions required across our content portfolio, platform, and operations to reset the business for long-term growth. We have the best IP in the industry and talented studios around the world, and we believe we can bring these strengths together and expect to return the business to growth in fiscal 2027, which is what Sharma echoed on social media. Now, okay, at some point over the next handful of months here, they are looking to cut another 1,600 jobs, right? They did 50% of their cuts all at once there early on. They're looking to make more cuts. And so is that how they're hoping to return to growth? They're going to cut spending so drastically that they can't help but grow? Their portfolio is not currently, like, their slate of upcoming games, which, you know, obviously there are some things that you have to assume are unannounced that will still materialize sometime over the next 12 months of game releases. But they're not going to magically create affordable hardware, right? It's not like the hardware pricing is going to go down. I don't think that consumer sentiment around cloud gaming is going to drastically change anytime over the next 12 months. There's a case to be made with pricing getting out of control and next generation consoles presumably being even more expensive, that cloud gaming will be an opportunity for them to market to lower income players, because they can say, oh, just pay for the subscription and we'll let you play in the cloud. You don't have to buy this pesky Xbox. I don't know how well that message resonates. I just don't. But like, most importantly, I think if we reset back to what actually matters and what actually drives this business forward, you need to have great video games that people want to play. They have some of those. They have some of the biggest ones. You know, Nadella is right. I mean, well, he's you know, there's an argument to be made. When he says we have the best IP in the industry, he may very well be right. However, a lot of that IP was the best in the industry 10 years ago or more. I'm curious to see how this Halo thing is doing for them. The campaign evolved thing that just came out. What I've seen from looking around is that it sounds like that that no one cares about it on PlayStation. Which, you know, it's a $50 single player first person shooter with online co-op and split screen co-op that requires you to have a second PlayStation account. Doesn't have to be paid, but you still have to log into an account and connect it to stuff in order to even play fucking split screen, which is broken. That's a terrible way to do this. It's a terrible way to do this. And so if they're big brands that used to be the biggest brands are not as big anymore, meaning your Halo, your Call of Duty, you could argue, is, well, no, there's no argument there. Call of Duty is down. Maybe this year ends up being a good year for them. The game looks interesting. And so maybe the game looks interesting, and Battlefield is not shipping this year. So like a little bit less competition from shooters at least. But they do have, obviously, the competition from Grand Theft Auto, whatever that ends up meaning, to any game. They have Minecraft, which seems to be something they are going to rally around. To what end, I don't know, but it does seem like when you hear the bits and pieces of what they think about they're going to do as they reset the business and all this other stuff, like you do get an impression that they're like, hey, Minecraft's big. We should probably invest further in that, which I'm sure the people working on Minecraft that previously were under the gun for ridiculous fucking returns on you know, the investment that they were getting, would probably agree. Like, yes, you should invest more in us because Jesus Christ, what the fuck? So, and yes, some of the reporting lines have changed around Minecraft as well. And so, yeah, you know, Minecraft is set to be even more important to Microsoft's future than it already was. What that means for Minecraft, you know, it could be positive, could be negative, right? Like they could roll a bunch of user-generated horse shit into it. It already has a lot. I mean, you know, like there's already a bustling storefront with some, you know, kind of externally developed products and services in that Minecraft store. So, you know, they already have something resembling a Roblox-esque ecosystem with Minecraft, but they haven't exploited that to its fullest degree, I'm sure. So I'm sure there are nightmare ways that they could ruin that. But like they don't have, you know, he says they have the best IP in the industry, and I think that the industry has been having a lot of trouble with what I would now probably start calling legacy IP. Like Gears is not Like, you know, people are excited about the Gears beta. It's coming up here pretty soon. Like, people got their hands on it. It sounds like it's nice. Sounds like the co-op stuff is really cool. I'm looking forward to it. But it's hard to imagine a world in which the upcoming Gears of War prequel is doing the sorts of numbers that are going to help them like really return to growth, right? And so then you start to dig in and you go like, well, what could they possibly have coming up, right? What do they have that's unannounced? Are they going to rush Elder Scrolls 6 so that it ships in the next 12 months? Like, you know, there was all the talk last week about, oh, we got these Fallout projects. Yeah, we're doing some stuff Fallout. Like, does any of that ship in the next 12 months? Does that help them return to growth? Like, it just seems like they have a lot of stuff that's either too far out, too complicated to ship in this time frame, or things that they might just ship early and fuck up even more, right? You know, they said that they weren't necessarily done with Starfield. What? Really? I got it, you know. Why? You know, if you've got all the, you know, is this just a 4-alarm fire and you're waiting for a 5-alarm fire to really make it's nuts, man. It's hard for me to believe that like the next Elder Scrolls ships in the next 12 months, right? And so when we talk about returning to growth by this time next year, I don't see it. Unless you're making such dramatic cuts to your costs that it all kind of works out in the end that way, and you close even more studios and you lay off even more people and make it even harder for the teams you have to execute and make great games. It's just really difficult for me to see what the vision is there. Because like, you know, what do you got? What do you got that's going to sell? Especially, you know, and the impact of this is unknown. But especially in the same fiscal year that GTA is going to come out, there's going to be a whole new spotlight shining on GTA. Whatever they end up doing with GTA Online, you would expect to materialize sometime in that fiscal year. And while Microsoft's services will benefit from that, theoretically, people buying GTA on their platform will result in more money coming their way. If there are shark cards to be purchased, then, you know, that's probably helpful. Do they think they're going to sell a lot of consoles as a result of the release of Grand Theft Auto? Like, they aren't really coming out and saying, hey, we think GTA is going to save our business. And I don't think it will. You know, that will certainly help them. But, like, I don't know, like, what... Are we going to see a third Wolfenstein game? They should make another Wolfenstein game. It sounds like they will. But I think even if that ships in this 12-month window, that's not something that, you know, as much as I want to see that franchise closed out properly, that's not something that just doesn't seem like something that moves the needle to the degree that they need the needle moved. So I just, yeah. It's a very weird statement from them, but and all I can look at it is go like, well, yeah, they still have to cut another 1,600 people. And maybe GTA will help. GTA will help. It's just a matter of how much. And then that gets into like, well, most of the co-marketing and you know, most of the marketing around GTA in recent history, and by that I mean 10 years ago, so maybe that doesn't matter. But like, PlayStation has done a really great job of associating GTA with their platform over the Xbox, and I don't think that's really changed. So in some ways, I think Microsoft is fighting an uphill battle there too. So, you know, yeah, will it help will the release of that game help their numbers? Sure. You know, but what does help mean? If 10 people go out and buy an Xbox to play GTA on it, that's technically help. It will surely be more than 10. But will it be 1 million? How many do they need? I don't know. Either way, real weird. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll finish out the news after this. Sometimes you just need something out of the way so that you can get everything else back on track. I get off track all the time. You know, the schedule is weird and things go sideways. The kids need this and and before you know it, it's the end of the day and I have skipped at least 2 meals. It's bad. It's bad. That's why Factor has been so great. Factor makes chef-crafted, dietitian designed, ready-to-eat meals so you don't have to choose between real food and convenience. They have over 175 banned ingredients to make sure that every Factor meal is designed around what supports a healthier lifestyle and nothing that doesn't. And hey, most importantly, Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. They require no prep, no cleanup. Even on the days when your schedule is completely unhinged, just wild, eating well is still achievable. Every week, you'll find over 100 nutrient-dense menu items to choose from. They've got new items like salmon burgers, shredded pork, collard greens, and more. Plus, they've got add-ons that you'll crave, like pumpkin-flavored cheesecakes and protein shakes. 97% of users agree that Factor meals help them live a healthier life, so you can feel confident that you're doing something good for yourself with every meal. And that's fantastic. They've got a great breakfast slate as well, some pressed juices and other things that you can get, and that's been really wonderful as well. So, hey, let's eat real. Head to factormeals.com/JeffG50off and use the code JeffG50off to get 50% off and 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year while supplies last until October 31st, 2026. That's the code JeffG50off at factormeals.com. JeffG50off at factormeals.com. See website for more details. Okay, so what else? What else with Xbox? There's talk. I guess a document got out, and The Verge got their hands on it. This was something that was sent out to developers as kind of an alert as to where things were headed about some of the upcoming Xbox games running on modern hardware stuff, and also some of this disc to digital sort of thing. Apparently, there was supposed to be some sort of beta for the disc to digital situation in July. That obviously didn't happen. But it was originally supposed to roll out generally this month in August. So, ultimately we don't know if that's something that is still going to occur on that schedule, but that is what this leaked document was referring to. This is basically what we had heard about. The idea is if you have an Xbox One or Xbox Series disc and you put it in your console, it will register that disc to your account, and you will no longer need to put the disc in to play the game. If you give the disc to someone else, then your license will disappear, and whoever holds the disc will be able to activate the license on their account. And so if you lend the game to someone else, you won't be able to play it while they are playing it, but when they give you the disc back, you'll be able to reclaim your license by putting it back in the console and playing it again. That seems to be how this stuff is set up to work. And again, something that only works with Xbox One and Xbox Series discs because, they presumably were not serializing the discs prior to that. Some of this is also, some of this document also got into some of the backwards compatibility stuff. People ripped apart the emulator remember they recently put onto Game Pass 4 original Xbox games that you could now play on PC. And when you get into the options on these, it looks like a kind of stripped down, emulator where it's got anti-aliasing settings and a few other things that you're like, oh yeah, emulators would have a setting like this. As people yanked that thing apart further and further, they discovered not only is it an emulator for original Xbox games, it's an original Xbox game emulator running inside of their Xbox 360 emulator, which is now running on PC. 3 generations deep in gangsterdom. And so, they had basically said that Xbox 360 was going to come to this stuff eventually anyway. I don't know if they've said that, but Xbox 360 stuff is going to come to this eventually. this is something that will not work with discs unless they have some sort of methodology for you putting a disc into a drive that's hooked up to your PC or whatever. And so part of what they kind of said to developers is like, hey, some of this stuff is coming for Xbox 360, and it's up to you if you want to sell these games or put these games into Game Pass or not. If you want these backwards compatible games to be available on the storefront, you can do so. And so it sounds like that their future for backwards compatibility is telling developers that they will be allowed to sell Xbox 360 games to PC players at some point in the future. Obviously, and when we say Xbox PC players, we mean Project Helix, they mean Windows machines, and everything in between. So, yeah, I talked about this already. I don't have the energy to go through it again, but this is not backwards compatibility in the traditional sense. This is them selling new purchases of emulated versions of games. That's fine. I think that that's a totally okay way to go. But when you think about the expectation for what backwards compatibility has been up to this point, which is, yes, you allow some of those purchases to happen for people that don't already own it on disc, and of course, because of course you do. People that have the disc used to be able to stick it into their Xbox and play it, and we're heading towards a future where it looks like that will no longer be an option. So, of course, we're also heading towards a future where putting a disc into any kind of device for video game playing will no longer be a part of the future. But, backwards compatibility specifically seems like a really weird way to phrase this stuff. And PlayStation's been sort of doing this for a while now, where they have PlayStation 2 games that you can play on a PlayStation 5, and they're usually part of the PlayStation Plus subscription service, but you can purchase them separately if you so desire. So in a lot of ways, it just looks like Microsoft is doing exactly that. We don't really have a way to take your 50-cent Blood on the Sand disc and turn that into a digital license that you can use to play on PC because of, the music licenses. THQ as a publisher does not exist in that form anymore. And so it's still going to be subject to the business problem that has, plagued backwards compatibility efforts in kind of these modern times. I think the disc to digital thing is fine. I don't know. Like the idea of, putting a disc into your drive to have to validate it as a key when instead you can kind of store that key because they have serial numbers on them. It's the sort of thing they probably should have done a while ago, and I'm sure has been in the works for some amount of time. It's handy. It's more than anything else. It's just like handy to not have to get that disc every time you want to play that game, because it's not like the game was ever running off the disc to begin with. It's just an installer. Like the disc drive on an Xbox or a PlayStation is basically a fancy package manager at this point. It ain't a real thing. Electronic Arts. Today is supposed to be the day that the sale of Electronic Arts closes to the Saudis, PIF, as well as at the end of this, that fund will own something like 95% of EA, with small percentages going to a venture capital firm, and then also an even smaller percentage going to a investment firm run by Jared Kushner. Cool. That cool dude. What a hella cool guy. He's like the new John Madden. Anyway, they'll own like 1% of it when all is said and done. And also a lot of the money that investment company uses to invest comes from the Saudis. So it's like a weird thing where 95% of it is owned by this fund, and then 1% of it is owned by this other fund that is also funded by Saudi. Anyway. That is all supposed to close today. So theoretically, EA is going to be taken off the market at some point this week. I have not heard, I kind of went and looked at the news to see if it had happened yet or if it had been made official, but the buyout has not closed and completed as of right now. They did have what will probably be their final earnings call As soon as they go private, EA doesn't have to get up in front of people every quarter and say, here's how we did. They don't have to answer to shareholders anymore. All of that stuff goes into a black box, and we never know how well Madden sold ever again. And so in some weird way, this is the end of an era. They did yesterday issue again what will probably be that final earnings call, and they're not doing great. I don't know, like they're off the mark. They missed expectations. Reuters kind of summarized the major points of the earnings call with a few bullet points here. Despite having a strong launch last year, Battlefield 6 has struggled to maintain player engagement, raising concerns about its long-term live service revenue potential. The company relies heavily on in-game spending to extend the life cycles of its titles and derive consistent revenue. They're likely to feel some sort of impact from Grand Theft Auto, because again, in a world where your company is dependent on ongoing engagement and ongoing spend in a lot of those games, if a bigger game comes out and steals all your players, even if they steal them for 3 months while they play through a single player campaign, and then maybe they come back, maybe they don't, GTA actually does stand to kind of create some sort of giant sucking sound of engagement out of a lot of these other games. I don't know. They have EU approval to make this acquisition close, and so presumably that will all happen at some point today. And then the fun can begin, right? I mean, now that they're not beholden to shareholders, EA can start making all those cool games. Like Desert Strike is back, Crusader No Regrets 2, 3, Crusader No Remorse 7. This is the Zany Golf. Yes, Zany Golf 2 is finally back. I think it is unlikely that a private EA gets into anything like that. I don't think that this results in, yes, they're not going to turn the Spore servers back on. The Haunting starring Poltergeist is not going to magically see a sequel out of this stuff. I think that even their big games seem vulnerable in a way that they hadn't before. I'm speaking mostly of, the stuff with the college football game, which shipped, by the way. I don't know if you're in a bubble that hears about sports game releases, but as I was talking about last week, it really, I feel like there are 0 people in my life right now that talk about anything that EA ships from a sports perspective or anything. Like I said, that UFC game apparently came out. I have heard 0 about it, like even just like the idea that anyone is playing it, let alone anything qualitative about it. Like, is it actually good this year or not? Like, just a fucking dial tone, nothing. The college football game came out, and there was a massive backlash from players because of the way that microtransactions were built into the single player mode. And so they ended up stripping all of that shit out. It was a case where people were pissed off enough, and also the college football game is still like relatively new enough that they're like, oh shit, we should probably fix that for them. That's not going to result in them making dramatic changes to microtransactions for the soccer game. Madden is not going to be some dramatic shift, but on that one they did in fact break. Remember, like this month they are shipping. What's the exact date on that? At the end of August, they are shipping Bit Reactor's strategy game, Star Wars Zero Company, which is like Bit Reactor is a lot of there's ex-Firaxis, XCOM folks in that, and it appears that they are making a turn-based tactics strategy game, set in the Star Wars universe that sounds pretty exciting. And then in theory, they're eventually going to make another Mass Effect game, right? And they keep threatening to make a new Mass Effect game. Presumably Respawn will have a third Jedi game one of these days as well. But as far as like sports, like it's hard to envision them making any dramatic changes. If anything, when we talk about the way that these things go after private acquisition, which I think we talked about when this was initially announced, this is the sort of thing where you've got a private equity style situation, and you're going to try to strip this company down to its most streamlined, profitable form, and that means layoffs. So I don't know. I really don't know what the future holds for EA, but it's hard to get excited about what they're up to, even before you kind of take the acquisition into consideration, because that just feels like that they are off. But the Zero company has always sounded really cool, so at least there's that. But it's not like Titanfall 3 is right around the corner. I pulled this for the news. This is just kind of interesting numbers wise. We talk a lot about consoles and who plays what and the failure of Game Pass or not failure of Game Pass and all of that other kind of stuff. And Circana's Matt Piscatella has posted a longer list of it's an engagement focused list for PlayStation and Xbox. So what this is, and I'll read you the list at some point here. Once I'm done explaining it, it's the top 20 games based on engagement, meaning weekly active users. So that means in the week that ended July 25th, 2026, these were the 20 most played games on these two platforms. And I think this was something that should have been obvious to me, but wasn't. When we talk about Game Pass and like the idea and the pitch of Game Pass of like, man, you get access to all these different video games. It's a wide catalog. There's always something new to play. And then you look at the games that are actually being played on Xbox and PlayStation, and you see how old a lot of them are. You realize why Game Pass did not work, because most of the players playing games on Xbox just want to play Fortnite forever, which is perhaps why Xbox integrated a Fortnite subscription into Xbox Game Pass. Either way, Fortnite is currently as of the week ending July 25th, Fortnite is the number one game on both PlayStation and Xbox. It starts to diverge from there. And remember, this is just people playing it. It's not necessarily purchases or whatever. So like Game Pass ends up having a factor here, or open betas end up having a factor here. The Xbox list, Fortnite is number one. Number two is Roblox. Number three is Call of Duty. And in this specific case, Call of Duty means like the last 3 years of Call of Duty, or whatever games launch inside of the Call of Duty HQ app or whatever. It's not just Black Ops 7. It's like 6, and it's Modern Warfare 3, and whatever else kind of all launch within there. And number 4 is GTA 5. And number 5 is Minecraft. And number 6 is NBA 2K26. And number 7 is Pal World. And number 8 is Forza Horizon 6. And number 9 is Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals. And number 10 is Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. And number 11 is Battlefield 6, which is up from number 22 the week before. I think they just released a new season. So because these are weekly numbers, like these actually do kind of, they can fluctuate, but the games at the very top end up kind of doing little minor shuffles. But you do have situations where like Battlefield completely dropped out of the top 20 and is back. Rocket League is number 12. Rocket League. Another game that outside of the, if they had not announced Unreal Engine 6 at the Rocket League thing, I would have not heard about or thought about Rocket League in I don't know how many years. And number 13 is Apex Legends. Number 14, Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, which is, I think, one of the few purely single-player games on. Is that the first actual single-player game to show up on this list? Yeah, I think it is. Yes. At number 15 is EA Sports FC 26. At number 16 is Call of Duty Black Ops 2, meaning the backwards compatible version of Black Ops 2, which I imagine has only appeared on this list in recent weeks because of everyone talking about Black Ops 2 as a result of the new release on PlayStation. But here on Xbox, it is still in it is back in the top 20. It is also in the PlayStation list, but we'll talk about that. At number 17 is the only new entry on the Xbox list, which is Shift at Midnight, which is on Game Pass. At number 18 is Madden. At number 19 is Destiny 2. And at number 20 is EA Sports College Football 27. And so again, that is weekly active users for the week ending July 25th. For Xbox specifically. And when you look at that list, where you do have, Shift at Midnight, is at least on there. I think it contextualizes, again, as someone who never really kind of put two and two together on this. This is the problem with Game Pass. This ended up being the exact problem with Game Pass, is the type of players. And I feel like I'm this type of player. I've always been this type of player. Even as a kid, I always wanted to play the widest variety of games I can. It's how I've always been wired. And I know there are other people out there like that, but they are not the majority. Right? Clearly. In a world where, your top 5 are Fortnite, Roblox, Call of Duty, GTA, and Minecraft. Like, that's not an environment where Game Pass thrives. Though you could argue that Call of Duty's popularity on this list is at least partially due to the most recent entry being a part of Game Pass. But that's a different money problem for Xbox. The PlayStation list is different, but not that different. And I think also highlights a Microsoft problem in the process. On the PlayStation list, again, this is the top 20 games ranked by total weekly active users for the week ending July 25th. And these are both US numbers, by the way. These are not worldwide, just to specify. Number 1 is Fortnite. Number 2 is NBA 2K26. Number 3, Call of Duty. And this is also last week's number 1, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. That's right. The $40 re-release of Black Ops 2 was in the week prior to this the number 1 game on PlayStation. It's crazy to think about these re-releases of the original Black Ops games being that high on the list. And I think it says a lot about the average age of the PlayStation player, because the only people that are out there playing, the kids ain't going out and buying fucking Black Ops 2. But maybe, I don't think kids are playing Call of Duty at all. So I don't know. The idea that this is number 3 and formerly number 1, it just feels like bad in 5 different ways. Much higher than the current year of Call of Duty, I might add. Number 4 is Roblox. Number 5 is GTA. Number 6 is Call of Duty. Again, that's the Call of Duty HQ thing that encompasses 2 or 3 years of Call of Duty into one application. And so it ends up kind of being weird there. Number 7 is Marvel Rivals. Number 8 is College Football 27. Number 9 is Minecraft. Number 10, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. At 11 is Apex Legends. At 12 is Call of Duty Black Ops 1. So a lot of people playing the original Black Ops, that re-release as well, which was also another $40 or whatever. They have been working. There's been a number of issues with the Black Ops 2 re-release on PlayStation in terms of hackers doing weird shit. And so they fixed some chunk of that, and they just pushed out another patch that I think addresses input latency on 120 hertz displays and a few other things like that. A little bit before these re-releases of Black Ops, not to get too far adrift of what we're talking about, they put a Black Ops Classic playlist into Black Ops 7 that only plays on old maps, of which there are a lot in Black Ops 7. And it strips out all of the movement and all of the other cool shit they do in Black Ops 7 to make it play a little bit more like the old Call of Duty. That playlist went online before the re-release of Black Ops 1 and 2 hit. But like that playlist apparently has been quite popular in there as well. And so if anything, it feels like that there's just a wholesale rejection of modern Call of Duty by the people that are still playing it. Which I think is pretty fucking wild. And I wonder how much of the Call of Duty audience is really just like riding this nostalgia wave. Even just the people that are playing the current game are still just like, I play this because it's ingrained. Like, this is what I play. I play this game because this is the game I play. And I play it every year, and I like this, and they changed it and made it. And so now they're getting a chance to prove it, and they're doing so by making Black Ops 2, a top engagement game on PlayStation, and Black Ops 1 is not that far behind. Anyway, okay, so that's at number 12. At number 13 is EA Sports FC 26. At number 14 is Madden. John Madden. Talking is hard. At number 15 is Rocket League. At number 16 is Pal World. At number 17 is Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. So the open beta for Marvel ended up being, which was free, a free download. Anyone could grab that. That managed to make it to number 17 on the weekly average users list. At number 18 is Battlefield 6. At number 19 is Dead by Daylight. And then interestingly, so, they did break out. At some point, the Call of Duty HQ app started containing fewer Call of Duty games. They split some of them out because that helps make the install size smaller. And they were like, okay, these need to be somewhere else now. And so they broke out some of the older games. And so at number 20, we get a fourth Call of Duty game on the PlayStation list. It is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, the 2023 release. Which is fucking bonkers that there are 4 Call of Duty games on the top 20 most active PlayStation games. But here we are. Again, I think the kind of... Yeah, Mason says no WWE. Yeah, I'm sure, I bet WWE makes its way onto one of these lists when they have new content out, right? Because again, this is a weekly list. And so week to week, some parts of this do shift, especially when you look at a top 20 instead of a top 10. I'm sure that the bottom spots on this move around based on new content, right? So we see Marvel showing up there because they did their kind of brief open beta. We see Battlefield in a situation on Xbox. Well, actually also on PlayStation, like it had exited the top 20. Which I don't think Matt actually posts the top 20 all the time. I think he normally posts the top 10, which is why this is kind of interesting because he did expand it to the top 20. And Battlefield was out of the top 20 last week, or the previous week, but this week it crawled back in. More so on Xbox than on PlayStation. But it kind of, when you're in a situation where you've got 4 Call of Duty games on the PlayStation list, it starts to underscore, what Microsoft's role is in the video game business, right? Like, they bought all this shit, they own it now, and it's doing quite well. But it seems to do better on PlayStation. It's going to be fascinating as fuck to see how these numbers relate, both, between PlayStation and Xbox as a comparison, but also year over year, because they're going to put out Call of Duty this year and not put it into Game Pass. So the Call of Duty numbers on Xbox, if anything, seem like they could be somewhat inflated, whereas on PlayStation, those are all games people paid real money for. Empty Warren asks, does Matt ever post Japanese stuff? No, Circana is focused on the US. There are other organizations that handle sales data for other parts of the world. And so this is the company formerly known as NPD, who has been tracking sales data, not just in video games, but, there's probably some part of this company somewhere that can tell you how many fucking bottles of Heinz ketchup got sold last week. I bet. Unless they divested from all of that. I don't know. Maybe they, but NPD has been tracking all kinds of wild shit for generations, longer than most of you have been alive. So this is the problem. Like, imagine now that you are a developer releasing a game, a new franchise, something that doesn't have a built-in audience. Maybe it's competitive in nature, and you're trying to get it out on consoles and trying to sell it to a new audience. You've got players that have been playing Fortnite for years. You know, Roblox is at the top of these lists. Call of Duty, entrenched. Minecraft, entrenched on both platforms. More so on Xbox because, you know, you do kind of get that. Perhaps that's part of a Game Pass bump. But as Phil Bosch says, Concord never stood a chance. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's why you look at this stuff and people go like, oh, Marathon did this and that. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, look at the reality of the world in which we live and what games are actually getting played on these consoles. It's I think it kind of paints a pretty clear picture that, like, if you want to get into this space and stay there, you need to be free to play, you need to be extremely high quality, or both. Ideally both. You know, Marvel Rivals has stayed on this list quite well for a game that seems like it's consistently on the verge of fucking it all up, right? I don't know. Like, I don't play Marvel Rivals, but it seems like any other live service game, it feels like it is on the verge of fucking destroying itself. And, you know, I mean, Overwatch is nowhere on this list, right? At some point in the past, it was. Aurora Borealis says, or make something unique and fun, like Mecha Chameleon, which, sure, yeah. That's not even on these consoles at this point. So it's not really a factor here. Maybe it will be eventually, and maybe it will take the console world by storm. But that seems like a classic example of, like, here's a big PC game. And, you know, would the console audience get into it? Maybe. It got streamed enough by big people that maybe console players would want to get in on it. Like, you know, anything's possible. I'm sure there would be interest in it, right? Have they announced anything about that game coming to console? It seems like a game that, like, there would be some sort of, not necessarily a bidding war per se. But no, like, it doesn't look like that there's been any sort of announcement. I mean, you know, it's a solo developer that put a game out on Steam and it blew up. Right? And to do all that drawing and painting, you're probably better off with a mouse. The touchpad on a PlayStation controller is only going to take it so far. And so, like, that's a game that will fucking do fantastic on PC and doesn't necessarily have a, you know, I don't know that game would have a massive future on consoles. Yes, sure. Perhaps with the Switch 2, you could force people to use the mouse or the touchscreen or something like that. And maybe that would get you there. There's also, you know, I hear stories, and I like some of this stuff hasn't materialized, or maybe it just hasn't materialized yet. But remember, like, I can't remember which one it was, because I know there was a rush of them, but there was, like, these drug dealing video games that come out and get real popular on PC. Whether that's, like, is Schedule 1 the knockoff, or is Schedule 1 the actual good one, the actual, like, there was at a point a lot of interest in, you know, bringing stuff like that to console in one way or the other, and, like, some of that stuff hasn't materialized and maybe never will. And so it's kind of the hard problem that I think that console, like, if you worked in third party at a console manufacturer where, you know, you've got this popular game that comes out on Steam and blows up, and it turns out it's, like, made by, like, 2 people or whatever, like, really small team, or, you know, yeah, Schedule 1 still gets constant updates, apparently. you have this situation where you've got a small team that's very focused on the thing that's already making them a lot of money, the PC version of their game. And you're like, hey, we would love to see this game on PlayStation. We would love to see this game on Switch or Xbox, whatever, right? We want your drug video game on Xbox, whatever it is. They don't necessarily have the resources to do that themselves. And also, by the time you got it together, whether you're like, okay, well, if you can't do it yourselves, maybe we can hook you up with a developer who can then do the port, and maybe we can do a marketing deal, and we hook you up with this, and you do this, and there are systems in place where PlayStation has done exactly that. We're like, hey, we're gonna help you port your game to our platform. It's not like a scary or unheard of thing. But by the time you get all that lined up, will anyone still care? And so this like trend chasing scenario that like normally would be totally fine. Like normally you'd be like, oh yeah, well we've got to get on top of this. Like this game blew up on PC. We've got to get it on our platform. Like by the time all of that happens and all that lines up, is anyone going to care? Or will the wave have crested by then and you're just releasing something like 6 months too late or a year too late? And like, well, I don't know. We did it. It's a good version of the game, but no one really cares. Yeah, as Phil Bosch says, it makes the Helix sound more appealing, but yeah, maybe that ends up being a secret leg up that they could have if they just are shipping PCs with a fancy UI on it. Is like, oh, by the way, bringing your game to Xbox is now exactly like bringing your game to Steam, except you have to get it ESRB rated or something like that. Yeah, it's anyway, like, as you walk through a lot of this stuff, it becomes a lot, you can really kind of see, hey, this is how hard it is to have a real hit, especially on consoles. Matt says, I should add they recently put RV There Yet into Game Pass and it did well on Xbox. Yeah. Yeah. So, there's certainly, you see some games like that are releasing that way too. Like, and some of these are games they're doing Game Pass deals for, right? So it's games that the Game Pass team is or the ID at Xbox team is seeing early on and going, oh, we want that. Like, I think they did a multi-title deal with Strange Scaffold, right? Because that game debuted on PC and Xbox, and that's it. And there's no other version of that game right now. And yes, Big Walk is out, and that is launching on PlayStation Plus. So they did a deal there. It's not to say that like it's impossible to get these games out. You just have to have a smart enough team in place to see them early. So when you have these hits that kind of come out and you're like, oh my God. Like Vampire Survivors is like a good, kind of classic example of that. But like the drug games ended up, I think, being kind of in that bucket as well, and Mecha Chameleon to a certain extent, where these games just kind of come out on PC and blow up, not like huge, but for the scale of the investment made in that game, developing it, the small team, all that, it's massive, right? And so wanting to kind of capture the zeitgeist on some of that stuff becomes very difficult for the console folks to do. And then at the end of the day, you have to convince people to stop playing Fortnite long enough to give a fuck. I don't know how you do that. If I did, I'd have a job somewhere in some nightmare third party team. Lastly, finally, an update on the Intellivision Amico, or perhaps just the Amico. They did sell the Intellivision name off, but they have not fully divested. You still see them using the Intellivision name in some spots. It seems like they have some work to do. They've got a lot of work to do, according to Time Extension, who discovered that a retailer had received an asset of the box for the Intellivision Amico that A, still says Intellivision on it, but B, has a bunch of video game characters near the console, including Wario and Rosalina and Luigi and Shy Guy What the fuck is going? Like, this is an amazing fucking box. This is a mind-blowing box. And maybe the most mind-blowing thing is that this retailer, who I believe is based in the United Kingdom, called The Game Collection. They're spelling favorite with a U, so they're clearly not. Yeah, they're in South Wales. They got a pre-order page up for the Amico, and they say that and someone responded to them and said, "Hey, what the fuck's going on here?" And they got on Twitter and said, "We did not design this image, but they did apparently receive some sort of asset. Time Extension did ask them questions about this image, and apparently they said the image was distributed as an official asset." This is a great quote from the Time Extension article. They were, however, unable to say if placing a pre-order at this stage would result in actually getting an Amico console. And so I don't know how this happens. I don't know, like, you know, clearly some mock-up was made before they had any art of their own and someone put a bunch of Nintendo characters on it, but how that ended up on a site that is apparently taking pre-orders for the Amico remains to be seen. Also, why would you take pre-orders for the Amico? As a retailer, why would you get involved in any of this? Why would you fucking open yourselves up to this fucking hassle? Like, oh yeah, we should take pre-orders for the Amico. Just don't. Wait until they prove that it exists and can actually sell any of them at any kind of scale before you go and start taking people's money, but apparently that's what they're doing. Yeah, Wario. A Koopa. What the fuck? What the fucking fuck? That's what happens, man, when your video game guy is too busy out there winning backgammon tournaments. He just, you know, no one has time to sit there and review images and make sure that they're official and accurate. That's going to do it for the news. Let's get into some emails. podcast@guard.bike is the email address for you to write in to me. Peter wrote in and said, I've been playing through the Mega Man Legacy Collection and wondering why Capcom hasn't tried their hand at some sort of Mega Man version of the Mario Maker games. The enemies, objects, levels, songs, everything is just as iconic, although maybe not as popular as the Mario series, but it seems to be a no-brainer that could do pretty well, especially the lack of Mario Maker on anything outside of Nintendo systems. Imagine playing as a Cutman sprite in a Mega Man 8 style level. Well, so, you know, look, there's good news and bad news here for you, Peter. The good news is they did that. The bad news is they did it on PSP. It's called Mega Man Powered Up, and it was not everything that you wanted that to be. They tried it. It was not as cool as that idea should have been. Post Mario Maker, you know, like taking those ideas and applying it to other stuff, I think you could absolutely do something like that, and I think it would be cool if Capcom did that. And there's a fan created thing out there too, also, if you want to that is better than the PSP thing in some ways. But yeah, someone should have done that. They did do it. They just didn't do it as well as you wish that they would have. Zach in Phoenix writes in, says, as genre boundaries become increasingly blurred in video games, what do you think is the most meaningless genre label today? It's role-playing. Like, it has to be. Like, if we're, you know, like every single game has the idea of leveling up and experience points and all of that other stuff has been applied across so many different genres now that every game has role-playing in it, or the standards of role-playing or whatever. And so when you say a thing is an RPG, like, some people just take that as shorthand for Like, oh, you can level up in it, or like you've got a quest log, which, like, I don't know, like plenty of action adventure games have quest logs. Fucking GTA technically has a fucking quest log. Is that a role playing game? The answer is yes. It kind of is in some sick way, depending on whether you can level up your physique by eating burgers or working out or not. Yeah, Fred Chuck Dave says deck builder, because deck builder is like 50-50 on it actually being a deck builder. Yeah, deck builder. If you want to write a word on your press release that gets me to not read the rest of your press release, deck builder is usually the word that will do it. To be like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't want to do that. There has been a lot of them, and even the good ones are games I'm not especially into. And so now that you're downwind of a bunch of amazing deck builder video games that are beloved, I don't want anything to do with it. So, yeah. I think it's role playing. I think role playing is as a subgenre or whatever, one of the most meaningless ones. Hey, I've been playing games for a long time, and so I think when your game functions in real time, if I can push a button to swing a sword and it hits somebody, like, I don't know if that's a role-playing game anymore. Baldur's Gate 3. That's a role-playing game. Baldur's Gate 2. That's even more of a role-playing game in some weird way. Icewind Dale is a fucking role-playing game. Skyrim is not a role-playing game. Skyrim is a first-person action game where you have stats. Anyway. Let's see what else we got here. J, just the letter J. J writes in and says, why is it that when peripherals for consoles are brought up, all the usual suspects like the Power Glove, Kinect, and Activator get roasted, but the Super Scope doesn't catch any heat at all? I begged for that giant hunk of junk and feel bad that my parents bought it only for it to devour batteries before quickly getting abandoned because it was just not fun to use. I still can't believe that it was a first-party item. It feels like Nintendo ran away from it immediately, and it is best known now for being in the Mario movie. Did you ever get a chance to mess with Nintendo's shoulder-mounted bazooka? Yeah, I never owned a Super Scope, but I played it at a trade show. I played Battle Clash? And yeah, they made a fucking bazooka, and you had to tap the button on the top of it to shoot, because that's how bazookas work. So they made a realistic fucking fake bazooka for your video game machine. It's I think it's kind of cool in its own dumb way. It's another fucking, like, it's another arrogant Nintendo situation is what it is, where the games that they made for it were well made for the bazooka, but then you had other people with other light gun games that then had to adapt their light gun game to work on the Super Scope, and that's where the button on top gets to be a hassle, because it's a fucking pain in the ass to pull that trigger over and over again. And so, like, the third-party gun games were never really any good on it's like a super short list of like games that even support it, right? It's not even like, obviously the Super Scope 6 cartridge and Battle Clash, but that's it as far as first party, right? You could use it in the Hunt for Red October. Apparently it does something in Lamborghini American Challenge. They put out Revolution X and Terminator 2, of course. Oh, Tin Star and Yoshi Safari. Yuck. And a couple of other games. So yeah, but like, I remember trying to play Terminator 2 on a Super Scope at one point and being like, this fucking sucks, dude. Was it just a trigger? Like, I'm looking at a picture of it now. Anyway, I don't. So that's right. There's a thumb button up here. There's a button on top, and then a thumb button up here, and a shoulder, like a shoulder brace type thing. That was a time when everyone was still a little bit afraid of the government coming and hassling them about violence in video games. So the further away you could get from making something that looked like a fucking gun, the better, they thought, right? They thought like, oh, okay, if we make a big dumb bazooka, no one's going to get shot carrying the Super Scope into a liquor store. Can't say the same for the Menacer, right, Sega? You monsters. But yeah, I don't know. The Super Scope was just, hey, I was maybe the right age for it at the time, but like the Super Scope initially, you're like, dude, that's a fucking bazooka. That's sick. And then you use it to actually play light gun games, and you go, this is terrible. Like, this is a fucking massive pain in the ass. The Menacer that they put out for the Genesis was not really much better. Sega's light gun for the Genesis, like they went a different path with it, where they put out a pretty standard light gun, and then it came with a zillion different attachments, and so you could transform it into a bunch of different shapes. And so you could put like a shoulder brace on it. It came with dual scopes, so you could have one for each eye, which no gun has ever done ever. It's the fucking stupidest shit. It's the stupidest shit. But you could just put one on if you wanted to, and also the scopes did not line up with it was not accurate to in-game. You couldn't even fucking use it to. It's just fucking stupid. And so they made this big dumb modular plastic nightmare light gun for the Genesis. And you could play like Ready Aim Tomatoes with it. So it just had that going for it. At least it had Ready Aim Tomatoes. Let's see. Alex from Halifax in the United Kingdom dares to ask the dangerous question that all of sci-fi could be written around. If games were digital from the start, would we demand physical? Alternate timeline. Video games only took off alongside the rise of the internet and so have always been digital. Would there still be a call for disc versions of games? No, there wouldn't. No one would care. No one would know. No one would know what they were missing, and so they wouldn't have ever thought about it. Alex says, my instinct is yes, but I think it's possible in this timeline games would have always been owned in the way that games from GOG are, so there'd be nowhere near as much enthusiasm for physical. No, I don't think that there would be any. No one would think about it. That's just the way that stuff would have always been. Also, if that was the stuff if that was the way that things always were, then I think that, yeah, you are probably right that like the storefronts and the features of those storefronts may have developed in different ways than they did instead. Darian from Toronto asks, why are none of the biggest games on Steam? Do you have any inside info about why games like Minecraft, Roblox, Fortnite, or League of Legends never launched on Steam? While it makes sense that they weren't ported over after becoming mega popular, you would think that their makers would have benefited from the platform when they were just starting out. Like, there was no guarantee that Roblox would become the juggernaut that it is now, and it sounds like it took many years to get there. It's money, you know? So if you're on Steam and you're selling things on Steam, then, you know, you have to give Valve like 30% or whatever of the money that you're making. And so some of these games are from an era when a lot of games weren't on Steam. A lot of these games are old enough. Like Minecraft is 2009? 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. And so remember that Steam used to not just allow anyone to put a game on Steam. It was a much more curated process, with a much smaller list of developers that were able to ship games there. And they tried to do Steam Greenlight and all of these other things that eventually led to just the floodgates opening, and now you can just put stuff on Steam, and it is what it is. And so a lot of these games never really had an opportunity to appear on Steam in those early days. Roblox, you know, like a lot of these games that are also kind of multi-platform, meaning they're on phones and stuff, like a Roblox where it ended up, you know, it just doesn't make sense for it to also be on another storefront. I think kind of the only reason Roblox is on the Microsoft store on PC is because it's already on that store on Xbox. But now both Fortnite and League of Legends are ecosystems unto themselves, and also, you know, they're from companies that still make other games. And rather than put those games on Steam, they would rather try to say, well, a bunch of people are already coming to us and downloading our client for, this is what Blizzard used to do before they got integrated into a bunch of shit and before people really started hating Overwatch. But basically they were like, hey, we already have something that's getting people in the door. People are already playing Fortnite. They already have to download our client to play Fortnite. Let's use that client to sell and market games. And so the Epic Store is really just that, you know, it's really just a way to play Fortnite, and hopefully you buy something else while you're there. And that's not been working out amazingly for them, but, you know, it's better than most. League of Legends, same deal. They're like, hey, you want to play Valorant? You already have our client installed. All of our anti-cheat bullshit is already built around this client anyway, so just download it and play it. Hey, World of Warcraft, that's a popular game. What about Diablo? You like those games? We're going to sell them ourselves. And so it made a ton of sense for them to do that sort of stuff. You know, you have some other situations where, like, Rocket League was on the Steam store at some point, and then Epic bought the developer of Rocket League, and it's if you already have Rocket League in your library, they do still keep Rocket League up to date on Steam, but I don't think you can go acquire it anymore that way. It's only for people that played it that way. Like, imagine you're Epic, and you're like, all right, we bought this thing, and now the people are going to come to us to play Rocket League, and then they don't. And then you try to give them incentives to come over. You're like, oh, we're going to give you a cool flag for your car if you download the Epic client and tie in your account, and you still have a ton of people that still just play Rocket League on fucking Steam because that's where they've always played it, and they don't want to download another client, and they don't give a fuck about your flag or, you know, or whatever other skin bullshit that you're trying to sell. That's gotta fucking suck, dude. That's gotta be like you wake up every day, not every day. It's been too long for it to still be every day. But that's got to be a thing where you're like, oh, this is going to bring people over, and then you look at it and go like, shit. Fuck. But yeah, I think that's, you know, ultimately those are the reasons there. It's just money, and they already have enough of a player base to not have to bother with it. You do have other games that are not on Steam that you go like, oh, I wonder, you know, maybe this could be on Steam, and that would be good. Like for a while, like stuff like Warframe. I don't think there was a good long period where Warframe was not on Steam, right? And you can still download that separately if you want to. You have a lot of the you know, gotcha games. A lot of the gotcha games, you know, didn't make their way to Steam. Like, you still can't play Genshin Impact on Steam, right? But yeah, that's not on Steam. But that might be on Epic. I mean, but a lot of these things, you know, you download stuff from the publisher directly, and yeah, some of that stuff is stuff where Epic did deals. Because I think, yeah, the Hoyoverse stuff, I don't know if it's all on Epic, but I know at least some of it is. TV says, the other day I saw some discussion around people not realizing that 2XKO was out because it's not on Steam. Yeah. Well, the release of 2XKO, like, no one, they did such a miserable job of launching that game that when I was playing it, I thought it was still in some sort of beta, and then I realized, like, oh, this, anyone can just go get this, huh? Yeah. I think I'm good. I think I'm good on not getting this. There was a 2XKO blog post going around week before, But it was like, they were like, what's in a name? Like, all these months later, they were still trying to, like, relitigate the part where they fucking picked the worst possible name for that video game that they could have. And they're like, well, here's why all these years ago we decided to name this 2XKO. You're like, yeah, it's a little late. It's like, why are you doing this? But also, why are you doing this? Why would you post this now? Are you reflecting on the game before it shuts down completely? Because what the hell's going on? I maintain that if they could have written it as 2XKO and still just said the words out loud, double knockout, or had a logo that said double knockout and then 2XKO in a little explosion down below or something. 2XKO does not roll off the tongue well. It's fucking stupid. And it's fucking terrible. Like, it's real. I don't know. So the idea that they got up there and like tried to defend it and said like, well, all our other names were bad too. It's like, well, maybe you should have kept going. I don't know. Like, whatever. Ultimately, that game's not good, so it doesn't matter what they fucking named it. It is what it is, but here we are. Some games eventually come to Steam, right? Tarkov is either now on Steam or just about to come to Steam. It looks like it is on Steam now. Mixed reviews. Yeah, who could have guessed? And famously, we have publishers that left Steam and then eventually came back once they realized that their own application was not going to do the job. Electronic Arts and Ubisoft, to name a couple. There was talk going around, it's a rumor flying around that I don't know that I don't know, anything's on the table at this, but yes, Rockstar is another one where for a while they thought, well, we're not going to put our games on Steam. And then they realized like, oh yeah, we should probably just put our games on Steam. There was talk that Microsoft might pull back from Steam, that they might stop putting their games onto Steam, which I think is interesting because it's still a case where even though a game like Gears is technically a console exclusive, it is available on Steam. And that's, I think, the extent of the rumor. I don't think there's anything attached to it in terms of what these games are or aren't or whatever. But like, there are situations where things that are primarily meant for Game Pass do not appear on Steam, like those Xbox games, your Fusion Frenzy and whatever else. Like that stuff didn't show up on Steam. But most of the games from Xbox Game Studios, or pretty much all of them these days, are still showing up on Steam. But if they're going to enter into a situation where they're selling a PC of their own with a storefront of their own, would they dare to try again? It's the thing, you do this job too long, you do any job too long to see new people come into it and people age out and retire or whatever. But it was one of the most maddening things about going back to CBS and being in the occasional meeting where people are trying to figure out what the fuck to do with GameSpot. And it's bad for everybody involved. It was bad for me. It was bad for the people, some other people that I worked with and some other people that were on the other side of it, is you watch people fucking present the same bad idea that you watched people do 15 years ago, like it is the fresh idea that's going to save them. Here's what we need to do. We should be making more original video content. And then 6 months later, we need to cancel all this original video content because no one is watching it. And we need to chase after trends. And then 6 months later, what if we did original videos? Anyway, the sitting in that cycle and watching it happen and being able to be the person who says, we shouldn't do that and here's why. We did this in 2009 and here's why this is a bad idea. It made me crazy. I was not the only person made crazy by this exact thing. But also, all of the people on the other side of it, they don't care. They don't want that. All you are at that point are you're the person in the meeting who keeps saying no. And so it's frustrating for everyone involved, and it's the fucking worst shit. And so, like, that was my first thought as soon as I saw, like, there's a rumor that Microsoft might pull all their games off Steam. I was like, yeah, they should try it, because there's a bunch of fucking new clowns in there that weren't there the last time that all the companies pulled out of Steam. They're like, yeah, man, we need people to come to us so that they're not paying the 30%. Yeah, I guess so, dude. Yeah, maybe this will work this time. Good fucking luck. And so I imagine there must be people who have been at Xbox long enough, or have just been in video games long enough to have watched that cycle play out last time and be like, fuck you. Like, fuck this. I've got to get out of here. How can I retire? No, I can't retire. I can't retire ever. Shit. All right, I'm going to sit in this meeting and go, yeah, man, let's try it. So it would be, I don't think it's a good idea for them to make their games available in fewer places. Even in the name of trying to have exclusives for Xbox or whatever. I think specifically pulling out of Steam on the PC is a bad idea, especially in an environment where you've got, and maybe this is why they would do it, to be honest. Maybe this is why they would at least make the pitch. But there is this idea of like, is your game going to be available here, or is it going to, is your game going to run on Linux? Are you going to make your game run on a Steam machine or a Steam Deck, basically? Because increasingly, Steam is, and it's by increasingly, I mean, it's gone from 2% to 3% or whatever. It's not some massive actionable number, but being on Steam is going to be the only way you can reach players that are running that style of handheld. And so as more of those devices enter the market, whether it's the Steam machine or the Steam Deck or other companies that are making Steam OS devices, if you're not in that ecosystem and you've pulled back to only be on, Windows PCs or Xbox PCs or whatever the fuck we're going to call them going forward, there becomes a more of a market that you're not able to address. And at some point that becomes a big enough number to become a problem. Or maybe they think by not putting their game on those platforms, they will help that number not grow. And they're like, fuck it, Linux is a problem across our entire business. People don't like Windows. They're doing this, they're doing that. Let's not support that platform in any way, shape, or form. And then they go, wait a minute. We have a bunch of people, like, we ported the fucking Windows terminal to fucking Linux. Like, wait a minute. You can run WinGet on a Linux. We build fucking Linux distributions into the OS. Wait, hang on. What are you talking about? And so the cycle continues. It's just, I don't know, man. It's like I said, at some point you've been on enough. You've been on the merry-go-round long enough that you've seen the fucking same horses fucking 3 or 4 or 5 times, and you've got these people coming into it brand new, and they all have the same fucking bad ideas. And you're like, yeah, dude, yeah, that's a good one. Go for it. Good luck with that. Or you're the stick in the mud who goes like, actually, I can provide some insight into why traditionally that has been a bad idea. And they will still want to do it because they'll have convinced themselves like, well, it's a different world now. Like, yeah, sure is. Yeah, good. Yep, totally. Go for it. How'd that work out for you? Oh, it's been sold how many times now? Oh, no one gives a single shit about it who owns it? Oh, yeah. All right, yeah, good. Go. Good luck. Let's see here. Time for a couple more questions. Pattern recognition is a curse. The ability to recognize patterns is an absolute fucking curse. To be able to see it all unfolding again and go, oh shit, I know how the rest of this goes. Amateur Throwaway writes in and asks, why are there so many racing games on PlayStation? Yeah. A year or so ago, I got inspired by your NES list and started using a randomizer wheel to go through and rank the entire PlayStation 1 library. Did you know Lightspan put out roughly 100 edutainment games and tools for the thing. I sure do. Anyway, that said, I wanted to ask you if you knew a specific reason as to why there are so many racing games on the PlayStation. It's gotten to the point where I limit myself to one racing game per session. Otherwise, I fear I may just hate the genre and myself. Is it just the advent of 3D getting people excited over new racing possibilities? Did it feel at the time that there were a lot of them? It didn't feel at the time that there were a lot of them, but now that there are not a lot of them, and you go back and look at that PlayStation library, you're like, man, there were a billion different licenses, and you had different parts of the world where different styles of racing were popular. And so, like, rally racing used to exist across multiple franchises. Like, it wasn't just Colin McRae. You had you had like first party, like 989 was making Rallycross, you know? And so I remember there being a lot of, your V rallies, your WRCs, like there was just a lot of rally racing at the time for whatever reason. It was, the PlayStation was very popular in Europe. And so that probably contributed to why there was a bunch of fucking F1 games. Yes, people used to get excited for Toka Racing. Marvel Toka Souls. The rally game that 989 did was awesome because it was one of the first DualShock games. And so it was one of the good first like analog, like, oh man, the rumble's really great. The analog stick is awesome. Like it was a really good early example of how that shit worked. And then, you get into your kind of non-serious racing games. And so, it was definitely an era when, kind of post Mario Kart, you had a lot of companies that wanted to make their own mascot racer. And so we ended up with, with Mega Man, you ended up with Rockman Battle and Chase. You ended up with Crash Team Racing. Yes, Woody Woodpecker Kart. Crazy. Was there a PS1 Crazy Frog game? I thought there was a PS1 and a PS2 Crazy Frog racing game, right? Motor Tune Grand Prix. Koro Q, whenever that would get localized under some random fucking name. There's a Speed Racer game. There was Street Racer. Super Bombad Racing. So you had, some Star Wars racing games in there too. Just that Muppet racing game. Jesus Christ, that fucking Muppet racing game. So I think I think it's a little bit of everything, right? You have different styles of racing that are popular in different parts of the world. So that's why you get more rally racing and you get more F1 stuff because, European popularity of that. And then, the majority of those games were getting localized for the US. You had the kind of arcadey mascot racer. And then you also had Need for Speed and these other kind of normal racing games that were popping up all the time too. Popularity of Gran Turismo certainly caused some of this. Even stuff like Driver, the worst license test in history. Driver. I think some of it was, polygonal gaming had finally reached a point where it was performant enough to do this, and we started seeing more and more attempts at, a car is a real thing you can look at and go like, how do we model a car? And like I always say, the wheels got more and more round as the technology became more refined over the generations. But you did have this like touchstone of like, this is a real thing and we can recreate it to some degree of effectiveness on this platform. And so you started to just see more and more of that. I mean, the very first PlayStation game ever made is Ridge Racer, right? It's like the disc ID on it is like 0001, but it's technically the very first PlayStation game was a racing game. And the licenses weren't always as big of a deal then, or there were enough different licenses to go around. And I think you could say that about most sports, right? There, certainly football. We saw much more competition between Madden and Game Day back then, and fucking quarterback club. That's been the thing about playing these N64 games is remembering like, oh yeah, there's like 3 or 4 different franchises for each one of these sports because Acclaim decided they wanted to make sports games for a while. What the fuck? Konami was making sports games for a while, not just soccer, not just Winning 11 or whatever. You know, Konami had like multiple basketball games, I want to say, on the PlayStation. And then you had Midway obviously doing its arcade stuff. And yeah, it's just a lot of fucking... There was just a lot of room for that stuff, I think. And racing was a genre that was, you know, obviously able to go in new directions because of polygonal rendering, right? They were able to do a lot more, and a lot of developers took advantage of that for one reason or another. And it was, I liked that up to a point, you know, like I didn't really give a fuck about Toka, and I will never care about F1 anything. And most of the rally racing games, like I was not, I've never been super deep into either, but like there was a variety, you know, you could afford to skip all of that shit because there was another one coming out right down the, you know, a couple months later. And it's not really like that anymore. Obviously, like racing franchises are it's a barren fucking wasteland. It's like occasionally EA makes a Need for Speed game, and then they get scared out of making more Need for Speed games because they never sell quite well enough for them to feel comfortable about it, right? And now they, you know, they owned all the rally racing stuff, and they've backed out of that. And so now we're at a point where, like, what's the only viable major racing franchise left? And it's not even Forza Motorsport, it's Forza Horizon. And, you know, because Gran Turismo doesn't come out often enough. Though it is obviously a major franchise unto itself for consoles, right? But there's just sort of a... There's a lack. There's room, man. It's part of why I was excited about Recreation. You know, obviously that game had its issues, but it's part of why I'm still excited about Recreation 2 being announced. Like, yeah, take another crack at it. There's room. There's definitely room. Someone's got to do something. Because a good racing game is cool. A bad racing game is less cool. You know, but yeah, Clutch. Yeah, obviously, yeah, Clutch is coming along too. So like, there's stuff, and that's fun. But it ain't like it used to be. But then nothing is. Cody in Orange County writes in, wanting to know if people were mad before. Was there much outrage when the PlayStation 3 dropped backwards compatibility with the PS3 Slim, or did the move mostly get a pass? While it's not nearly as dramatic a move as dropping physical media altogether, I don't remember anyone being all that upset. What was your perspective as someone covering the industry at the time? There were people that were not happy about it, but it ended up being more like, I don't know, you know, people just wanted the older model if they cared about that stuff. And most of the people who cared about that stuff cared about it deeply enough that they probably already had a PlayStation. And what is it? So the PS2 stuff specifically... It was that the first generation of PS3s had it built in hardware, and then they rebuilt it in software, or was that just for PS1? Because like but they ended up doing a few different iterations on it before they had kind of gotten rid of that stuff. And yeah, you could still get a PlayStation 2 relatively cheaply. So if you really cared about that stuff, you still had a PS2, and you know, like it was just sort of a not that big of a deal. And backwards compatibility was a new enough thing at that point that I don't think people were really super mad about it. I remember there being some, like, you know, some good old fashioned internet outrage when Sony removed the other OS support from the PS3, when they dropped the ability to install Linux on a PlayStation. And that resulted in like a class action kind of like, if you bought a PS3 because you thought you were going to be able to put Linux on it, then we're going to send you 67 cents or whatever, like, or a copy of fucking Warhawk, or, you know, like whatever it was. Yeah, $10. Because people were using the other OS functionality to hack PS3s. And so they decided to remove it. And people were pissed about it, but, you know, Linux was involved, so those people are maniacs. And now we're all those people. Now we're all Linux curious now. Oh man. That's gonna do it. Thanks everybody for writing in. I hope you have a tremendous week. Today is Tuesday, of course. Wednesday, I'll be back. We'll do something with video games. I don't know. We'll hang out. And of course, Friday, we will rank more 64-bit video games of the Nintendo variety. You can head over to Jeff.Zone if you want to influence that list, or you can go to letsago.science, LETSAGO.science, if you want to see links to all of the N64 videos that have been produced so far and where the current rankings stand. Last Friday, if you want to watch it, and you should, because it's been a good time, we played Bomberman 64 and something called Big Mountain 2000, which was a snowboarding game. Turns out, I was like, is this going to be like an off-road racer or what? I don't even know what this is going to be. All right, it's a skiing and snowboarding game. That makes sense. Not to spoil it for you, but Bomberman 64 is every bit as bad now as it was then. Holy smokes. What a fucking miserable video game that is. Go check that out. See the science with your very own eyes. And I will be with you again tomorrow, and we'll hang out and do some stuff. Have a good one.